Chapter 397. Status unable to conceal his glee, the king of the Qin kingdom looked around before clearing his throat. Now that everyone is here, your king would like to order a decree. As of now, I appoint Jian Chen to be the imperial protector. Does anyone object? As the king gave his decree, the entire hall descended into a quiet calm. Each one looked at the king in a mixture of astonishment and disbelief. An imperial protector and imperial advisor were two different ranks. An imperial protector was higher in power and authority than an imperial advisor. An imperial protector could mobilize the army at a whim, and even order the imperial advisors to manage any affair. Another terrifying power that an imperial protector had was the ability to behead an incapable ruler or any incompetent official. This was to say that their power was even above that of the nobility of the kingdom. The king of the Qin kingdom had seen what potential Jian Chen had, so he appointed him to be the imperial protector. The decree of the king not only stunned the audience, but even Qin Ji, who was standing next to him. There was a look of utter shock on his face and a blankness had entered his mind. Half a moment later, the silence was broken as a white-haired elder came forward with his hands cupped together. "Your Majesty, this cannot do. Jian Chen is deserving of a spot as an imperial advisor, but an imperial protector is not appropriate. Prime Minister Kirill speaks correctly. The title of an imperial protector is far too high for a decision to be made this quickly. It would be more proper for Jian Chen to take the title as an imperial advisor for now." Another elder spoke. "Your Majesty, the title of an imperial protector cannot be made too rashly. This should be talked with the entire imperial advisors or perhaps even some of the revered imperial protectors to see if he is qualified." Another simply dressed person spoke. This man exuded a large amount of air, and was a general that commanded plenty of power himself. "Your Majesty." A countless stream of opposition could be heard from the audience. Although Jian Chen was a genius they had never seen before, the title of an imperial protector was truly far too great of a position. Many of the nobles were especially vocal. With Jian Chen's age, they didn't dare let him be an imperial protector. At the same time, there were also a large amount of supporters of the king. At that moment, 20 people suddenly appeared in the palace. The majority of them were elders, but some were middle-aged and 3 were 30-year-old women. These people quietly walked up to the back of the palace without a word or anyone noticing them. When the king saw the group of people standing behind the crowd, he revealed a small smile. "That's correct. The title of an imperial protector is not something a king could appoint. This power goes to the imperial advisors and 4 imperial protectors themselves." With that, the king stood up from his throne. "With that, I would like to invite the imperial advisors to investigate. Does Jian Chen have the ability to be one? I agree to appoint Jian Chen to be an imperial protector." One of the elders spoke out in agreement. Smiling, he cupped his hands together in salute to Jian Chen. "I pay my respects to the imperial protector. Your Majesty." With just a few imperial advisors agreeing, it will be hard to convince the crowd. If His Majesty wishes for Jian Chen to be an imperial protector, then all of us imperial advisors need to consent. An elder spoke. Smiling, the king replied, "Commander Xu speaks the truth. Now then, imperial advisors, what do you think? We all give our consent to allow Jian Chen to be an imperial protector." An elderly voice called out from the back, causing everyone to turn around. When the crowd saw just who these 20 people were, they all looked at them with shocked eyes and open mouths. Each one of these people held influential positions and were all imperial advisors in their own rights. At this current moment, all of the imperial advisors were already gathered here. The group of 20 imperial advisors began to walk forward, the entire crowd splitting apart to form a road for them. In a quick moment, they arrived right in front of Jian Chen before everyone cupped their hands. "We pay our respects to the imperial protector." At this sight, the king of the Qin kingdom began to laugh without holding back. On the contrary, the crowd contained to look on in shock as if trying to comprehend what had just happened. One of the imperial advisors spoke out loud. "Everyone doesn't need to worry. The appointment of Jian Chen to become an imperial protector was also approved by the 4 imperial protectors as well. The 20 of us just recently made contact with those 4 before we gathered here. If anyone has any suspicions, they can go to any of the imperial protectors for proof." With that, the entire audience began to grow noisy once more. The imperial advisors of the Qin kingdom were all Heaven Saint Masters, so when they saluted Jian Chen, he was knocked in for a loop. At a loss for what to do, Jian Chen didn't know what to think. In no time at all, he had been inducted to become one of the imperial protectors of the Qin Huang Kingdom. Your Majesty, this one's experience is still quite lacking. I'm afraid that I may fail to please. Jian Chen bowed to the king. Laughing, the king replied, Nephew Jian Chen, appointing you as the imperial protector is something that the 4 imperial protectors have consented to. With this king cannot make any decision. There was some hesitation on his face. Becoming an imperial protector for the Qin Huang Kingdom was no small matter. However, because of how fast the situation had developed, Jian Chen had no time to figure the benefits and detriments and could not come to a resolution. Seeing the look of hesitation on Jian Chen's face, Qin Ji's own face had a minute amount of worry to it. He and Jian Chen had only a regular relationship for now, but he was absolutely willing to have Jian Chen be an imperial protector since it would be a tremendously good thing for him. But this expression from Qin Ji had gone unnoticed by Jian Chen since he was currently stuck in a dilemma. Although the title of an imperial protector was indeed high, but he didn't wish to be tied down by it. The entire palace began to grow in noise as everyone looked toward Jian Chen. Xiao Han on the other hand had gone as white as paper before shaking all over. The authority of an imperial protector far outstripped the powers of his grandfather. It could even be said his grandfather would be a subordinate to Jian Chen. Qin Ji's face grew more and more panicked as he feared that Jian Chen would not accept the title of an imperial protector. In the end, he couldn't hold it in anymore and spoke. Jian Chen, being an imperial protector of our Qin Huang Kingdom means that you would be able to use the space gate of our kingdom without any limitations and our resources. Even your authority would be comparable to the king. Upon hearing the ability of being able to use the space gate, Jian Chen's heart skipped a beat before he spoke. Your Majesty, if I were to become an imperial protector, would I have to limit my movements? Of course not. Nephew Jian Chen, you will not be limited in your travels as our imperial protector. We only wish that in our moment of need, you will come to help us and to not work against us. The king smiled. With that, Jian Chen came to a conclusion. This was a deal that was almost all benefit with no detriment. With the Qin Huang Kingdom's strength, the chance of it being in danger was practically nil. With that thought in mind, Jian Chen no longer hesitated and agreed to be an imperial protector. We pay our respects to the imperial protector. After Jian Chen's consent, every single person within the audience began to swoop in to give their respects. The title of an imperial protector was extremely illustrious and was far more powerful than even the lord and sometimes even the king of the kingdom. With at least half of the imperial protector's agreement, a noble could be removed from his position without even the king being able to overturn it or risk a large war. From this, it could be seen that an imperial protector was a powerful entity. Afterward, the nobles and the imperial advisors began to congratulate and pull Jian Chen into their good graces. Although Jian Chen's young age had caused everyone to belittle him at first, his potential was not ignorable to anyone. His future was something no one would be able to predict, and even the 4 imperial protectors were astounded by him. Jian Chen becoming an imperial protector made Qin Ji extremely happy. His smile could illuminate the night and could not be masked. Jian Chen's appearance had truly taken the spotlight for the events of today. It was originally a day of celebration for the king's 50th birthday, but instead of the king being the main character, the great winds had been stolen by Jian Chen. However, the king wasn't sad in the very least. The smile on his face could not be said to be unhappy at all. For the king to be able to make a great genius become their imperial protector, this was a great honor for the Qin Huang Kingdom. In the future, it could be possible that the Qin Huang Kingdom would be able to stand alongside the 3 great empires of the Tianyuan continent. Chapter 398. A gorgeous exit. The 50th birthday celebration for the king of the Qin Huang Kingdom quickly came to the end. When the nobles and officials had all bade their farewells to Jian Chen, he immediately went for his own room. Now that Jian Chen was an imperial protector for the Qin Huang Kingdom, his status was far different than from when he first came. He had been given a splendid new palace to live in called the Qin Heaven Palace. The Qin Heaven Palace was where only imperial protectors were permitted to live in. Not only was it grand in scale, but even the interior furnishing and arrangements were superior to Qin Ji's flowing cloud palace. Carrying the still sleeping heavenly tiger god, Jian Chen followed the palace maid to the Qin Heaven Palace. Looking all around at the splendor of the palace, Jian Chen was momentarily speechless. The Qin Heaven Palace was so splendid that Jian Chen could swear that he had never seen such a grand palace before. Great imperial protector, allow this servant to help you bathe and your other needs. The beautiful maids accompanying Jian Chen spoke with expectant faces. The female maids were all carefully selected by the king, and were around the age of 20 as well. Not only were they extremely beautiful, but they were also virgins. Still looking around the resplendent palace, he waved a hand toward the maids behind him. "You may leave." "Great Imperial Master, could it be this servant is not suitable for your needs?" The maids cried out miserably to Jian Chen. Their faces were a mixture of desire and misery. Not only was Jian Chen very handsome, but with a glorious title of an imperial protector, it would be a great honor to spend time with him. "You can go, I am not used to being served on. If I have something to ask for, I will call for one of you." Jian Chen spoke calmly before walking with the tiger cub. Seeing Jian Chen disappear, all of the carefully selected beautiful women had disappointed looks on their faces and walked out with sorrow seen clearly on their faces. On the outside of the palace, 500 armored soldiers stood quietly as if they were statues. With solemn expressions on their faces, they looked extremely impressive as befitting their positions as the guards of an imperial protector. To them, this was the greatest honor they could receive. No other guard would be as well respected as them. Aside from the other guards protecting the other imperial protectors, no other palace guard could compare to them, or even the army. All of these palace guards were great Saint Masters at the very least, with 5 Earth Saint Masters captains led by a 6th-cycle Earth Saint Master. All of this could be said to be Jian Chen's personal army that served only the imperial protector, and even the king wouldn't be able to command them. The night quickly passed without incident, and by the next morning, one of the palace captain assembled outside. "A report for the imperial protector. The third prince wishes to see you." Once he had made the leap to become an imperial protector, Jian Chen's status had suddenly surpassed Qin Ji's own status. Now, if Qin Ji wished to enter the Qin Heaven Palace, he would need to ask for Jian Chen's permission. Quickly, Jian Chen walked out to greet Qin Ji and personally led him in. Touched by this gesture, Qin Ji followed Jian Chen in with some joy. Within the palace, Jian Chen had commanded the servants to move away so the two could have a talk in private. Congratulating Jian Chen on his promotion to become an imperial protector, Qin Ji had truly felt happy to see Jian Chen's status go up. Talking cordially with Qin Ji, Jian Chen felt that despite the sudden winds of change blowing in his favor, his friendship with Qin Ji should remain unaffected. He should treat him as he had before this, since if it were not for Qin Ji, then Jian Chen wouldn't have this honor in the first place. "Jian Chen, now that you are the imperial protector of our Qin Huang kingdom, the space gate is open for you to use at any time. However, I hope that you could stay here for a little longer." Qin Ji smiled. Jian Chen shook his head gravely. "I'm sorry, but I must hurry on over. Now that I can use the space gate at any time, I must go now. The longer I wait, the more anxious I feel." "Jian Chen, could you tell me just what matter has gotten you so anxious? Would I be able to help you in any way?" Qin Ji asked in concern. Now that Jian Chen's status had changed, he was even more prepared to help him. Hesitating for a small moment, Jian Chen relented. "My homeland is on the verge of a war. I must hurry on over there or else I'm afraid something terrible may happen." Growing serious, Qin Ji asked about the nature of the war and the finer details of the situation. After listening to everything, his face dropped in seriousness and smiled. "A small matter then, with such a small region declaring war, our Qin Huang kingdom will be able to resolve it without question. Jian Chen, you can mobilize any of the elite masters in our army. Do you wish to use them?" "That won't be necessary. My homeland is still quite some distance away even after the space gate. With my speed, it should take 2 or 3 months to arrive, but with an army, the speed would be drastically slower. By the time the army gets there, it would take at least a year." Jian Chen replied. "Then take some of the imperial advisors at the very least. With your position, you could take all of the imperial advisors without opposition or question. Don't worry, our Qin Huang kingdom has 4 unbelievably strong imperial protectors to remain here to defend the place without worry." Jian Chen hesitated as he listened. He knew that the Jessen kingdom had a dozen Heaven Saint Masters at the most, and the other 4 great kingdoms had at least 23 of them. This difference in strength was far too great. Seeing the look of hesitation on Jian Chen's face, Qin Ji knew of the conundrum within his mind. Encouraging him, Qin Ji spoke. "Jian Chen, don't hesitate and don't forget your power. You have the authority to mobilize such a force." After some consideration, Jian Chen had finally consented to Qin Ji's proposal. For the sake of insurance, Jian Chen would bring some of the imperial advisors with him. "Jian Chen, you need not worry about the limits. With your command, You needn't even report this to the king personally. Have the palace guards gather some of the imperial advisors and convene here. Qin Ji spoke since he knew Jian Chen wasn't as knowledgeable about his newfound authority yet. Afterward, Jian Chen had followed Qin Ji's proposal and had the palace guards gather up the imperial advisors. In a flash, 20 varying aged imperial advisors had convened at the Qin Heaven Palace. Although Jian Chen was quite young, his strength had already earned the respect of all the imperial advisors. Despite the position between them and Jian Chen wasn't too far apart, they wished to become friends with Jian Chen. In their hearts, they knew that not only was Jian Chen accepted by the 4 imperial protectors, Jian Chen would sooner or later step into the realm of the Saint Rulers and even the Saint King realm. By then, they would want to be in his good graces, so this was the time to increase their connections. Once Jian Chen had explained his reason and plan to the 20 imperial advisors, each one of them had readily agreed to go with him. Seeing just how enthusiastic they were in replying, Jian Chen had doubted the space in power between an imperial advisor and imperial protector. In fact, he had begun to question whether or not if it was him being asked for help from the imperial advisors instead. Just then, a refined-looking elder walked forward with his hands cupped in salute. Great imperial protector, this one is Shao Tian, the grandfather of Shao Han. I've heard yesterday that my dunce grandchild has offended you. I can only hope that you will forgive my unworthy grandchild. I've already taught him a lesson and locked him in as punishment. This journey with you will serve as a part my atonement for my grandchild. I hope that you will forgive him. Jian Chen looked at Shao Tian as if to study him. Shao Tian was wearing a white robe in a refined manner and his white hair was tied up around his head. There was a heroic spirit to him, and justice could easily be used to describe his aura. Is this the 5th cycle heaven Saint Master Qin Ji told me about? Jian Chen thought. Knowing who Shao Tian was completely different from actually meeting him. After seeing him just once, however, Jian Chen had a feeling that Shao Tian was an extremely righteous person. This type of open and straightforward person was a clear-cut contrast to his grandchild Shao Han. After some quick thinking, Jian Chen cupped his hands with a smile. Mr. Shao Han, you must be joking. The matter with your grandchild I have already forgotten about. If Mr. Shao Han wishes to come with me, then I have no objections. Nonetheless, I am grateful for your support. Smiling widely, Shao Tian spoke. You are too modest. To be able to accompany an imperial protector is a great honor to me. Then after selecting the 4 strongest and most reliable individuals, he began to prepare to leave for the Jessan Kingdom from the Qin Heaven Palace and soon headed toward the space gate with Qin Ji leading the way. Leading the 5 imperial advisors with Shao Tian as the strongest one there, the other 4 imperial advisors were 2 4th cycles and 2 3rd cycle Heaven Saint Masters. Although they weren't the strongest of the imperial advisors, Jian Chen had faith in them. The space gate was in the center of the palace, and with Jian Chen's status, he didn't require notifying anyone before using it. Taking the 5 imperial advisors to it, he handed several Class 5 monster cores and began to locate the desired destination. Then, in a single line they crossed through the space gate. Chapter 399. Return of a King in a Single Stride. Jian Chen traveled countless of miles away from the Qin Huang Kingdom. For the 5 imperial advisors, they had traveled into a strange new area. The space gate they had traveled from slowly disappeared from view as Jian Chen took the tiger cub ahead and started to scout the area out. No matter where he turned his head to, he could see no signs of plant life or anything else. The entire place was a barren land. Great Imperial Protector. Where is this place? One of the imperial advisors spoke with a questioning look as if trying to figure out what place this was. Qing Shaofan, you should stay behind the Imperial Protector and speak less rubbish. Another Imperial advisor spoke. Forcing out a smile, Qing Shaofan laughed in embarrassment. I'm just very curious. From the 5 Imperial advisors that followed Jian Chen, there was Shao Tian, Qing Shaofan, Dongyi Junbai, Chao Kaqin, and Tian Luo. 2 of the elders were Qing Shaofan and Dongyi Junbai, who were both 4th cycle Heaven Saint Masters. Chao Kaqin and Tian Luo were both 3rd cycle Heaven Saint Masters, but all 5 of these men were already over 100 years old. It was at this moment the tiger cub had suddenly awoke by opening its bright eyes in curiosity at the strange new place it was in. Taking notice of the cub, Jian Chen placed it on the ground. The cub was already decently big and was already the size of a mature dog. By this point, it wasn't suitable for the tiger to be around Jian Chen's chest. On the ground, the tiger cub started to run around merrily while everyone watched it revolve in a circle. From time to time, it would sniff each one of the 5 imperial advisors. Taking out a map from his space ring, Jian Chen scoured over it before looking dejected as he glanced around. I don't have a map of this area, so I have no idea where we are. Let us find a nearby road. Jian Chen didn't have the most accurate coordinates of the Jesson Kingdom, so the space gate had only sent them to an approximate area near it. Right now, Jian Chen didn't even know if he was in the Jesson Kingdom or not. Qing Xiaofan cupped his hands together. Then please guide us well, Imperial Protector. Well then, let's leave this place. Jian Chen waved his hand, causing a large bubble of wind to envelop the tiger cub and levitated it into the air. The cub began to growl in discontent as it flew into the air. It was as if it wanted to be held by Jian Chen instead. Both of its eyes looked pitifully toward Jian Chen as tears began to well up in them. Haha, Imperial Protector, this magical beast of yours is quite intelligent. It has to be a high-leveled magical beast. Qing Xiaofan spoke. Laughing, Jian Chen chose not to explain anything and instead patted the cub's head with his hand. You've grown far too big for me to carry anymore. Allow me to bring you through the air with my wind element instead. Don't worry, I won't let you fall. As if the tiger cub understood Jian Chen's words, it continued to shake its head as tears continued to roll down its face as if wanting to be put down on the ground. In the next moment, its entire body began to shrink at a rapid pace before turning into the size of a tiny cat. It looked adorable. This magical beast can manipulate its body size? How extraordinary! One of the 5 imperial advisors looked beyond surprised at the cub. Even Jian Chen had a surprised look on his face, but he knew of the tiger's identity already and so he quickly calmed down. Shooting a glance at the 5 imperial advisors to his side, he smiled. This white tiger is vastly different from the other ones. Being able to change its body size is its innate ability. That sounds about right. This tiger-like magical beast even has wings on its back. This must be a variant. Some of the magical beast variants have unknown abilities that can allow a good amount of the magical beasts to be able to transform their body. Dongyi Junbai spoke up. He was the oldest out of everyone here and so his experience wasn't lacking. After that, no one had bothered to investigate the tiger's identity, allowing Jian Chen to breathe out a breath in relief. Holding the tiger to his chest, Jian Chen began to fly through the air. An hour later, the group of travelers had already flew for a long distance. At this moment, a tiny city suddenly came into view. With his eyes shining brightly, Jian Chen hastened his way over there with a group of men behind him shooting along into the city with him. This was a second-class city so it wasn't too large. The moment Jian Chen walked in with the other 5 imperial advisors, the cat-sized tiger sea asterisk kept its head all around as it took in the sights. Walking into the largest store in the city, Jian Chen bought the most expansive and detailed map of the surrounding area. In a quick moment, he had located the coordinates of the Jesson Kingdom in comparison to where he was. Right now, there was 15,000 kilometers of distance to travel and 2 kingdoms to go through. Shopkeeper, might I ask, do you know if there is a war or anything happening within the Jesson Kingdom? Jian Chen asked. The current state of the Jesson Kingdom is a mystery to me since it's too far away. However, some news did travel here that a war had broken out 3 months ago. I believe there were 4 kingdoms that united against the Jesson Kingdom. That kingdom is finished. The shopkeeper sighed. Paling, Jian Chen quickly tossed a purple coin onto the table and walked out with the map. After distinguishing the way, Jian Chen flew into the air in the direction of the Jesson Kingdom. Straight away, the 5 other imperial advisors flew into the air in pursuit, leaving the rest of the streets in silent awe at the 6 figures. In half a day, the entire streets exploded with gossip relating to them. Within a second-class city, an Earth Saint Master was already hard to spot, but a single Heaven Saint Master was even more rare. With 6 of them suddenly appearing out of nowhere, it would lead to a huge uproar for everyone. For the rest of the day and night, Jian Chen continued to fly without stopping. Finally, on the morning of the second day, they finally arrived at the bordering kingdom of Qiangan Kingdom's stronghold, stopping there in order to obtain some information. He had to make sure of the current state of affairs and make a contingency plan. Chapter 400. Seething anger during the peak hours to eat breakfast, Jian Chen had taken the tiger cub and the 5 imperial advisors from the Qinhuang Kingdom into the best restaurant in a city. The 6 men crowded around a table and began to enjoy the best meals the place had to offer. The tiger cub, on the other hand, was voraciously eating a special plate of delicious-smelling barbecued beef. With a content purr, it continued to swallow the pieces of meat one after another while the rest of the inn gave the table a strange look. Jian Chen sat at the table and listened around for the nearby chatter without eating a bite. The Qiangan kingdom was especially close to the Jessen kingdom, so Jian Chen was able to make discreet inquiries about the current state of the Jessen kingdom. As for information that was spread by mercenaries, the information they told would be both fast in spreading and reliable in truth. The Jessen kingdom is done for. The 4 kingdoms combined have well over 2 million people at the moment, while the Jessen kingdom has only several hundred thousands men. How could they stop that? The Jessen kingdom has the most fertile territory out of every kingdom nearby, so the other kingdoms have long since been eyeing it like candy. Right now, the Jessen kingdom is relying on the strongholds to buy them some time, but their army will break down after some time. I heard that the Jessen kingdom had originally 6 million people, but now they were below 1 million. By now, the kingdom surely must be recruiting soldiers in a frenzy. There's only 200 middle-tier magical crystal cannons supporting them, but their supply of monster cores are already at an all-time low. Even the national treasury is nearly empty, so the major and minor powers of the kingdom are supplying the monster cores. Half a month ago, 10 of the cannons had exploded after being used too frequently. I heard they had blown up one stronghold and caused thousands to die. The difference between the Jessen kingdom and the 4 allied kingdoms is far too much. Even if they were to convene all the soldiers and employ mercenaries, their fighting power wouldn't exceed 3 million. The 4 allied kingdoms have well over triple that amount if they wanted to. Furthermore, the Jessen kingdom doesn't have half the amount of experts the other side has. This time, the Jessen kingdom will fall. I've heard that 2 Heaven Saint Masters from the Jessen kingdom have already died and another 3 sustained serious injuries. The 4 allied kingdoms, on the other hand, have a single Heaven Saint Master on the verge of dying. But rumors say a Radiant Saint Master brought him back to full health and healed the others. That means they suffered virtually no damages. After hearing these bits of information, Jian Chen grew even more pale in the face. Although things had not yet reached the worst-case scenario, the situation was looking bleak for the entire kingdom with the difference in military might. You guys won't know this, but 3 days ago, I came back from the Yen kingdom. From there, I heard rumors about a terrifying Heaven Saint Master from the Jessen kingdom. Going against 6 other Heaven Saint Masters by himself and sustaining serious injuries, he used some sort of supernatural Heaven-tier battle skill to kill 2 of the Heaven Saint Masters and heavily injuring another 3. The remaining survivors lost their courage and fled from him. I heard about that too. People say that even among the Jessen kingdom, he was a Heaven Saint Master that was extremely low-profiled. Not being counted in the top 10 experts and with even fewer people knowing his existence, it is only now that people have started to notice him. I think his name is Chong Wuji? Then, another one of the travel-weary mercenaries spoke out to the previous person that spoke. So what? That Chong Wuji must be an expert at the very pinnacle of his realm, otherwise, he wouldn't be able to employ such a strength. Let me tell you an even more shocking piece of information. From the battle 3 days ago, an Earth Saint Master was able to severely injure one of the Heaven Saint Masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom. Impossible. Just how could an Earth Saint Master be a match for a Heaven Saint Master? I don't believe it. Why don't you go and trick a demon before trying us? The entire inn began to burst into chatter without anyone believing what the mercenary had said. I wouldn't lie. They say that the Earth Saint Master used some sort of Heaven-tier battle skill and heavily injured the Heaven Saint Master. If not for the intervention of another Heaven Saint Master, the Earth Saint Master would have killed the Heaven Saint Master. That battlefield was a spectacular sight. When a Heaven-tier battle skill was used, the sky would turn a different color and black clouds would roll in. With the sands and stones flying through the air, it would be difficult to see anything and hear nothing but the Earth Saint Master using his Heaven-tier battle skill. Each time he did, the earth shook, including the Jessen Kingdom's stronghold. At that point, everyone had been scared witless. No wonder I felt something was amiss 3 days ago, but could this really be true? That'd be terrifying. The Jessen Kingdom's stronghold is only 1,000 kilometers away from this place. That's not far away at all. For the tremors caused by a Heaven-tier battle skill to be felt here? That's impossible. The man continued to speak. That's not all. People say that this Earth Saint Master was a wind-attributed Saint Force user with an impeccably fast speed. Even after contending with the Heaven Saint Master for half the day, the two Heaven Saint Masters did not manage to chase him down and kill him. That's pretty amazing. Is he even an Earth Saint Master? Several people from the inn began to murmur in surprise at the supposed Earth Saint Master's strength. Hearing this, Jian Chen had a slight smile on his face. He had already guessed that this speed could only belong to the Heaven-tier battle skill wielder Ming Dong, who was also an Earth Saint Master. But the man hadn't finished saying all that he knew on the subject. The fall of two Heaven Saint Masters hadn't gone unnoticed by the four allied kingdoms. 2 days later, the four kingdoms employed 2 million soldiers to the northern stronghold to engage in a day and night battle. The sounds of the war had deafened the ears of everyone, and the blood of the fallen dyed the ground a permanent red with the bodies stacked up on top of a mountain. By that point, the northern stronghold of the Jesson kingdom could not longer keep up with the battle. Even the reinforced tempered steel gate had been broken down, with both sides nursing heavy losses. I heard a Heaven Saint Master from the Pingyang kingdom had even captured a high-ranking officer. Cutting off both arms and legs, the Pingyang kingdom then had him strung up on top of the walls of the Pingyang kingdom's stronghold. How savage! Did the Pingyang kingdom have some sort of intense grudge with that officer? Even with the advantage they had, did they have to act in such a manner? For both his arms and legs to be severed, that person must be an illustrious general then. The inn started to chatter once more with this new piece of information with an interested fervor. Smiling, the man shook his head. You guess wrongly. That person was no illustrious general. He was just some nobody called Chang Yang who, I believe. He was merely just a frontline commander. Seated from not too far away, Jian Chen's entire body froze up as his face suddenly turned pale to a terrifying degree. In an instant, he had disappeared and reappeared right in front of the man who spoke. Both of his hands grabbed onto the clothes of the speaker and lifted him straight out of his stool as Jian Chen thundered. What did you just say? Who was the person that had their limbs amputated and strung up on the walls? Jian Chen's eyes grew extremely red and a killing intent could be felt from him. Bastard, are you trying to die? The elder exploded in rage as he grabbed at Jian Chen's neck with his own hands. Speak! Jian Chen roared like how a furious lion would. His voice had caused the entire inn to shake as his eyes grew even colder. The spark in his eyes was almost like a sharp sword that could pierce into the man's own eyes, terrifying him so much he couldn't look at Jian Chen directly. At the same time, an extremely formidable amount of killing intent exuded from Jian Chen's body, causing everyone in the inn to feel like they had been dropped into a vat of icy cold water, chilling them down to their very bones. The previously noisy inn had instantly turned quiet. Everyone's eyes turned toward the furious Jian Chen with their bodies trembling in fear. Not a single one of them had dared to move since from the youngster's aura. They could all feel a terrifying amount of power within him. Even the man that Jian Chen had grabbed hold of had been stunned into silence. Without another outburst, his face had turned pale and his entire body began to tremble fiercely. Jian Chen's entire killing aura had covered the place, but it had affected him the most. With the aura, the man felt himself unable to breathe and slowly suffocating to death. Don't kill me. What did you want to know? I've already said everything. I know. The man stuttered in fear. By now, he had begun to treat Jian Chen as a terrifying death god that caused even his soul to quake. Jian Chen's eyes grew in ferocity as he stared at the man with unconcealed bloodlust, who had his arms and legs amputated before being strung up on the wall. You better not lie to me, or I'll let you die a pauper's death. With his last sentence, Jian Chen's words had already devolved into a primal growl that combined scarily with his bloodshot eyes. I said, that person was Chang Yang. Chang Yang who? He was captured by a Heaven Saint Master in the Pingyang kingdom. All 4 limbs were cut off, and then strung up on the wall, for an entire day. The man stammered. Chapter 401. Advent of the Furious. After confirming things, Jian Chen's face grew extremely dark. The killing intent that was originally within the inn had instantly exploded outward to cover the streets, causing even those on the outside to suddenly find it hard to breathe. It was almost as if the entire temperature nearby had gone down by several degrees and dunked them all within a pool of icy water. This effect on them had been so extreme that it caused even their spirits to shake. The 5 imperial advisors all gave each other a baffled look, They had never seen such a strong amount of killing intent come out from Jian Chen before and had no idea what to do. Big brother. Jian Chen's eyes grew redder as if blood was starting to gather within it. With a growl, he tossed the man aside and instantly flew out of the inn with the wind element in the world accelerating his speed away from the place. As he flew into the sky, a cyan-colored glow appeared around his body and shot him straight forward before disappearing from sight completely. Imperial Protector. The 5 Imperial advisors cried out. Each one bolted from their stools with serious face. Seeing Jian Chen's reaction to what the previous person said, each one of them could guess that there was a connection between Jian Chen and the man who had all of his limbs cut off. You 5 go help the Jessin Kingdom fight off the 4 allied kingdoms. Protect everyone from the Chongyang clan. Straight away, the 5 men could hear Jian Chen's icy voice call out to them. Jian Chen's announcement caused them to feel speechless. With a helpless look to each other, Xiao Tian spoke out. Let's go to the Jessin Kingdom then. Jian Chen's sudden departure had caused the tiger cub to be hurt. Unable to continue eating the barbecued beef on the table, the tiger cub instantly leaped down from the table and sped towards the doors. Both of its eyes began to well up with tears as it cried out desolately. The scene was like a mother abandoning its child, causing everyone watching to have an unbearable feeling of pity. Seeing how pitiful the tiger cub was, the 5 Imperial advisors looked on with a disturbed expression. Walking up to it, Xiao Tian wrapped the tiger cub around his chest before looking back to the others. Let us go. After walking out the inn, the 5 Imperial advisors flew off into the sky, leaving the rest of the inn speechless. Jian Chen was wrapped up in a layer of wind, causing his body to fly off at a speeding light that was easily seen even in the daytime. Right now, his travel speed had reached an all-time high as he flew toward the Pingyang Kingdom stronghold. Within Jian Chen's mind, he couldn't help but think back to his eldest brother Chongyang Hu. A brother like that was an absolutely unforgettable person. While Jian Chen had been no help to Chongyang Hu at all back in Kargath Academy, his eldest brother had helped him out whenever possible. This was a tried testament to just how much Chongyang Hu cared about him. Aside from his father and mother and his second sister, Chongyang Mingyue, Chongyang Hu was the 4th person to matter to him. Although Jian Chen had left his home to travel for many years, in the end, he was still Jian Chen. His personality had undergone no change, and the people he cared about were still those closest to him. Big brother, absolutely nothing can happen to you. I, Jian Chen, pledge that I will raise the Pingyang Kingdom to the ground if even a single hair is harmed. I'll let the 4 kingdoms be the offerings. Jian Chen's eyes radiated with bloodlust and a large amount of killing intent as he flew forward. There were 6 kingdoms surrounding the Jessin Kingdom. The Qiangan Kingdom, the Pingyang Kingdom and the Jessin Kingdom were connected to each other like a triangle. He crossed over the Qiangan Kingdom's stronghold and flew another 3,000 kilometers toward the Pingyang Kingdom's stronghold. In a distance, the stronghold of the Pingyang Kingdom could already be seen by Jian Chen. On the 80-meter-tall stronghold walls were a myriad of stone-faced soldiers. There were about 2 million soldiers stationed within the stronghold, and from the skies, the tents stretched across the grounds like a continuous blanket. There were plenty of soldiers that were also patrolling around the stronghold wearing their armor. Another 1 million soldiers had already gathered outside the northern Jessin Kingdom stronghold. While that was a huge number ready for a full-on assault, there was still the 2 million soldiers left as a reserve just in case there was a need. Floating in the air several kilometers away from the Pingyang Kingdom. In his eyes, there was grief as his body began to shake and tremble violently. Just 15 kilometers away, a limbless and bloody body could be seen tied to the stronghold walls. His clothes were dyed red with blood, and even his hair had become a greasy red along with a rope restricting his body. Despite being over a dozen kilometers away, Jian Chen's omnipresence ability was enough to allow him see this. Despite all the years that had passed, Chongyang Hu still looked the same as when Jian Chen had left. The only difference now was that his face was as pale as paper and his eyes were closed. Whether he was alive or not, Jian Chen didn't know. Seeing how desolate Chongyang Hu was, Jian Chen's eyes began to dilate in fury and bloodlust. His levitating figure began to tremble even more violently, feeling as if he was going to drop down from the skies at any moment. In the past, Jian Chen had wished to himself many times over that he could see his family members once more. At that time it would have given hope and joy. In the past, he had also thought about returning to Kargath Academy and let his elder brother see his strength. He had never imagined that his triumphant return to his homeland and family would be met with a heart-wrenching tragedy that he couldn't bear to accept. Eldest brother. Jian Chen howled in grief before his eyes flashed red and a large amount of killing intent began to billow outward in a single wave of emotions like a cloud. The air around Jian Chen turned cyan in color before he instantly flew toward the stronghold walls. The 2,000,000 guards standing watch over at the stronghold had jolted with surprise. All of the soldiers within the tents immediately charged out and stared at the incoming figure of Jian Chen. Bang 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 bang. Several drums could be heard from within the stronghold, signifying that an enemy was invading and that the entire stronghold should prepare itself. On top of the city walls, an armored middle-aged man walked out from a nearby building. Seeing the flying figure of Jian Chen, his face blanched for a moment before barking out an order. Release the arrows. At the command, several whizzing sounds could be heard in the air as several large crossbolts were shot from the stronghold. Jian Chen's eyes flashed with a violet light as he began to control the world itself. The crossbolts flying at him several kilometers away began to slow down in speed noticeably. Not too long later, the crossbolts froze up in midair, much to the shock of the soldiers watching. Every single one of the crossbolts began to revolve in suspension before an azure and violet flash of light enveloped them. In the next second, they were sent flying back at the stronghold with a speed even faster than when they were first shot. The soldiers looking on from the walls cried out in shock. Before the commander could bark out another order, the crossbolts pierced into the stronghold walls. Bang 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 bang. Following the series of explosions, the walls of the stronghold could be seen with several holes and plumes of smoke coming out of it. Several of the more unfortunate soldiers had been struck through the chest with the arrow, and the structural foundation of several buildings had been compromised. By this point, Jian Chen had already arrived at Chang Yonghu's side. With great sorrow and tears, Jian Chen cut apart at the rope holding his brother. It was with great pain that he held Chang Yonghu to his chest. Eldest brother. Seeing how Chang Yonghu was unconscious, Jian Chen called out in grief once more. With his eldest brother a cripple in physique, there was no way Jian Chen would have been able to accept this. Hurriedly taking out one of the radiant spirit pills he had taken from the cave during his time in the gathering of the mercenaries, he forcefully fed the pill to Chang Yonghu to preserve his life. His eldest brother was still alive, but because of the blood loss, he was barely hanging on by a thread. Taking out a gem from his space ring, the commander of the army immediately crushed it before jumping down the walls. With his strength as an Earth Saint Master, he stood no chance at all against a Heaven Saint Master, so the only chance in preserving his life was to flee. Fire! Fire! Shoot him down! Several soldiers began to cry out before shooting the crossbows at Jian Chen. One by one, the iron crossbolts began to fire at Jian Chen like moths to the flame and covering the entire sky with iron. But Jian Chen's ire had already climbed up to the peak. In this moment, his eyes had flashed a dangerous azure and violet color before his mind force encompassed the entire area around him. The crossbolts were unable to advance any closer to his body and froze up in midair. Slowly turning around, they ricocheted back towards the soldiers with the azure and violet light reinforcing its speed. Cries of misery could be heard as soldiers fell to the ground by the mass. With the azure and violet sword chi reinforcing the crossbolts, there was no way for any of the soldiers to defend themselves. Jian Chen continued to control the crossbolts with his mind, slaughtering every single one of the soldiers in his sight. In a short moment, several 100,000 soldiers garrisoned in the stronghold had been massacred. Afterward, the azure and violet sword chi that were around the crossbolts began to converge in front of Jian Chen before forming a 10-meter-long sword. Grabbing hold of it, Jian Chen instantly swung it at the stronghold. Chapter 402. Chongwuji Bang. Following the sounds of a huge explosion, the giant sword made of the crossbolts struck against the stronghold walls. Despite the tempered steel that could resist the blasts of a magical crystal cannon, the stronghold walls easily crumpled like tofu at the reinforced sword strike. As soon as the dust had cleared away, a 30-meter diameter hole could be seen. At this sight, the remaining survivors looked at the hole in terror before everyone began to dash in every single way possible in an attempt to evade the falling debris and escape. Jian Chen's eyes grew even more ferocious with the azure and violet light in them. Today, I will raise this stronghold. I, Jian Chen, will make the Pingyang Kingdom will pay a heavy price. Each word had been pronounced with a powerful boom that was emphasized by his hatred. His killing intent quickly spread around the area and brought the temperature down by several degrees. Bang! Another explosion could be heard as the countless crossbolts rained down onto the ground, destroying it. Another barrage of crossbolts slammed against the stronghold walls, creating yet another 30-diameter hole. Suddenly, a whistling sound could be heard as a strong amount of aura filled the air. In the next moment, 4 figures could be seen flying through the air at breakneck speeds. Regarding the 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang Kingdom, Jian Chen's eyes began to frost over with killing intent. The crossbolts formed a giant sword with azure and violet sword chi flickering all around the blade before instantly shooting toward the 4. With a great shout, the 4 Heaven Saint Masters reinforced themselves with Saint Force before colliding with the giant sword. When the 2 sides collided, a loud explosion that rocked the entire area could be heard. A bright explosion of colors could be seen flying everywhere, causing the soldiers right underneath the blast to be sent flying through the air with serious wounds. Many of them even had their inner organs destroyed by the blast, killing them instantly. In a battle between Heaven Saint Masters, even the fallout from each and every strike was capable of killing a person. If even an Earth Saint Master were to get too close, they would find it hard to withstand the shockwaves. The shockwave rippled 300 meters in diameter within the stronghold, burying many soldiers underneath the blast and even causing serious damage to the walls which began to wobble and shake. A battle between 5 Heaven Saint Masters was far too intense. Even the giant 10-meter-long sword Jian Chen was wielding crumbled apart under the 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang Kingdom. In the next second after the shockwave had died down, Jian Chen enveloped Chongyang whose body in a bubble, allowing it to float in midair. By now, the 4 Heaven Saint Masters had already drawn within 100 meters of Jian Chen, each one leering dangerously at him. However, when they saw just how young Jian Chen was, they were startled beyond belief. Jian Chen was far too young to be wielding such strength. They had been unwilling to accept that such a youngster was able to attain the realm they had attained. Humph! He must have used some medicine to recover his youth, claimed one. The other 3 Heaven Saint Masters firmly believed that this was the case. Another one of the 4 bellowed out. "You there, state your name. Who was the one responsible for cutting off all 4 limbs of my eldest brother?" Jian Chen growled dangerously, ignoring the question. "What, your eldest brother?" The 4 Heaven Saint Masters were startled. The person Jian Chen was holding had his 4 limbs hacked off. Could Chongyang who have a Heaven Saint Master leveled brother? The 4 Heaven Saint Masters were so startled that they thought they had misheard. Who was the one who did it? Jian Chen repeated once more with his killing intent filling the air. Giving a look to each other, the 4 men began to try to figure out Jian Chen's identity. "Sire, who are you? I believe I may have misheard something." Just then, an enormous streak of fire could be seen flying across the sky like a streaking shooting star that was falling in their general direction. Not too long later, the red light came to a stop 500 meters away in the air, revealing an elder with the fire element surrounding his body like a bubble. The elder was rather ordinary looking with his white hair tied up behind his wrinkled and pale face. When the elder glanced around, he immediately took notice of the suspended limbless figure of Chongyang who, paling even more, the elder let out a cry of utter grief and sorrow. "Young master." The 4 Heaven Saint Masters turned to look at the newcomer with an angry sneer. "Humph, Chong Wuji, you really did come. After killing 2 of our Pingyang Kingdom's experts, I shall have you buried right next to them today." Chong Wuji's eyes instantly blazed with a ferocious killing intent as he glared at the 4. "You dare cut off the 4 limbs of the young master? Very well then. Allow this old man to accompany you. Even at the cost of my life, I shall see you all slain." "Humph, how brassy. Even as injured you are, you can still utter such words." One of the Heaven Saint Masters snorted in disdain. Cupping his hands and bowing behind him, he spoke, "Senior Chen Yun, please show yourself." His voice was spoken in such a way that it could be heard from far away. A white-robed elder could soon be seen flying toward the 4 Heaven Saint Masters. The elder had his hair tied up in a crane style and looked as refined as a scholar. Judging from his aura, Jian Chen felt as if this was a man who had been enlightened. "Chen Yun, I never would have thought you would bring your Qiangan kingdom into this. Could it be you are also conspiring against the Jessen kingdom with the other 4 kingdoms?" Chong Wuji's face was like stone now. The situation had grown extremely dire. If the Qiangan kingdom entered into the equation, then that meant there was 5 kingdoms fighting against the Jessen kingdom. Chong Wuji had also known that Chen Yun was a part of the imperial line within the Qiangan kingdom.
He had resided within the deepest part of the palace in order to cultivate, and had already lived for nearly 400 years.
Despite being a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Masters, he was infinitely close to becoming a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master, and was also the strongest individual in the Qiangan Kingdom. Chen Yun looked at Chang Wuji for a moment before looking at Jian Chen with a dark look. Who is he? The 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang Kingdom shook their heads. We don't know who he is, but he has to be related to the Jessen Kingdom. Chen Yun stared at Jian Chen for a brief moment before turning back to Chang Wuji with a smile. Brother Wuji, we haven't seen each other in 100 years, but I didn't think that your strength would reach such a degree. The Qiangan Kingdom is not involving itself in this affair. I merely wish for your Heaven-tier battle skill. You want my Heaven-tier battle skill? Chang Wuji growled. Correct, Brother Wuji, if you hand over the battle skill to me, then I will back out of this. Chen Yun laughed. Humph, you don't lack courage. The 3 forms of the wild python is the legacy imparted to me by my master, yet you still dare to ask. Do you not fear the return of my master and the destruction of your Qiangan Kingdom? Chang Wuji spoke dangerously. Chen Yun had a look of fear streak across his face for a moment before smiling. Chang Wuji, you are still thinking of your master who has been lost for dozens of years? You are correct that Patriarch Chongyang's strength is truly astounding and has no match. But you've forgotten, he has been lost these many years. With his age already reaching 900 years old, he has surely reached the end of his lifespan. The fact that no information has been heard from him is proof enough that he is dead. Humph, my master was a genius even among the heavens and a person without equal. Just what mystery in the world could stop him? When he returns, he will raise your Qiangan Kingdom. Sneering, Chen Yun spoke. Chang Wuji, I, Chen Yun, am not an easily threatened person. I have given my word, if you hand over the Heaven-tier battle skill to me, then I will leave. Don't think that just because this old man has been injured, you will not escape unharmed. A surge of energy became to well up from within Chang Wuji.
Despite the injured state he was in, his head was still held up high without fear of combat.
At that moment, the 5 enemy Heaven Saint Masters were preparing to fight. As they stared at Chang Wuji and Jian Chen, a battle was preparing to break out. Just then, a cold voice could be heard. Hand them over to me.
Today, I shall raise the Pingyang Kingdom and hang the heads of all those here on these walls.
It was Jian Chen who had spoken with a calm voice. Although there was killing intent radiating from his body, everyone else was surprised by his words. Raise the Pingyang Kingdom. Hang the heads of the strong on the walls. The 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang Kingdom had taken this as a personal insult. Steaming with anger, a flood of killing intent began to direct itself toward Jian Chen.
One of the Heaven Saint Masters had barked out. Brat, you cannot distinguish what is the ground and what is the sky.
Do you think you are Patriarch Chongyang and will destroy the Pingyang Kingdom with your mere Heaven Saint Master strength? Even Chang Wuji had a flabbergasted look as he looked at Jian Chen, and the Chongyang who with a skeptical look. He had no idea just what connection there was between these two in order for Jian Chen to be willing to risk his own life and brave a fight with these Heaven Saint Masters. Chang Wuji began to inspect the youngster that was Jian Chen with suspicion. There was a familiar feeling to him as if the two had met before, but he had no idea just where he could have possibly met such a youngster before. Despite the feeling, he had no recollection of Jian Chen since all of the Heaven Saint Masters he had met before were all middle-aged men. The other Heaven Saint Masters hadn't tarried either. Immediately taking out their saint weapons, they swung them about to protect themselves. But the swarm of debris was far too much for them, and so several pieces had managed to make their way through their defenses and penetrate into their bodies. There was a shocked look on their faces before throwing out all notions of not taking the fight completely serious. Use your saint force to protect yourself.
One of the Heaven Saint Masters cried before a colorful swarm of saint force covered his own body. It condensed like a protective shroud around his body. However, the shroud had been unable to completely protect its master from the debris, and had only managed to slow down the speed. Knowing that this could not be allowed to continue for much longer, the 5 combined their attacks and struck out all over the area before charging toward Jian Chen. Raising both hands and then forming fists, Jian Chen began to levitate the fallen crossbolts on the ground to converge them into one spot. At the same time, several trees began to be forcefully uprooted from the ground and filled the air with wood splinters. In the end, The two sources began to combine together in order to form a long sword several hundred meters tall that stabbed into the skies themselves. From far away, it looked as if it was a giant tower that scaled into the heavens while radiating with a bright azure and violet glow. What is this? The four Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang Kingdom and Chen Yun from the Chengon Kingdom were stunned. The pieces that were being levitated by Jian Chen had suddenly formed a giant sword out of nowhere. A sight like this had caused them to cry out loud by accident. Is this a heaven-tier battle skill? Asked one Heaven Saint Master seriously. It can't be. It doesn't have that power a heaven-tier battle skill would exude. This isn't a battle skill. Chen Yun cried out. In the next moment, the giant floating sword began to condense before forming a 100-meter-long sword. With this decrease in size, the items making up the sword had been compressed against each other in an inexplicably dense manner. Along with the density of the sword, the brightness of the azure and violet sword qi began to increase as well. With a fierce howl, Jian Chen brought the giant sword smashing down toward the five Heaven Saint Masters in an attempt to kill them. Adopting a grim expression, each one of the Heaven Saint Masters cried out as they began to use their advanced Earth-tier battle skills. Bang! Another explosion could be heard as the energy from the resulting blast threatened to rip apart the skies. The energy continued to cause havoc and destruction as it washed over the air and shook the earth. Several parts of the earth had even crumbled and sunk in from the energy. In the aftermath, all of the surrounding area within a 10-kilometer circumference had been affected. The origin energy of the azure and violet sword qi was far too pure of an entity, so when Chen Yun's sword had made contact with it, there would inevitably be a crack on his sword. Upon taking damage from his saint weapon, Chen Yun took on heavy damage as well. Spitting out some blood from his mouth, he looked at the weapon in his hand in complete shock. Without a delay in his movements, Jian Chen stabbed with the origin energy of the sword spirits once more. With great ease, the Saint Force protective shroud around Chen Yun's body had been pierced straight through before Jian Chen's strike aimed for Chen Yun's head. What energy is this? Chen Yun cried out in terror before jumping backward to avoid it. While the origin energy-formed sword had missed Chen Yun's head and allowed him to escape with his life intact, his entire left arm had been severed by the blade. Spitting out blood, Chen Yun began to drop to the ground looking extremely frail. Stifling a groan of pain, Chen Yun rose 1,000 meters into the air once more and stared at the blade in Jian Chen's hand. Just what is that energy? With its force, my saint weapon had been hit. Staring darkly, Jian Chen began to use his killing intent to glare at Chen Yun before chasing after him. Chapter 404. Punish the Heavens, Destroy the Stronghold. Seeing the incoming Jian Chen, Chen Yun looked startled. A single attack from him had damaged his saint weapon and his fighting spirit. Without delay, he immediately turned around and began to flee. Jian Chen stared at the fleeing Chen Yun with a cold sneer and called out after him. I will spare your life here today. Another day, you will come to personally witness the destruction of the Chengon Kingdom. May you realize your folly in meddling in this affair. Hearing this, Chen Yun's body began to shudder. Previously, he had thought Jian Chen to be someone beneath his notice. But now, he was fully aware of Jian Chen's strength and didn't doubt his ability to do as he said. In order for a kingdom to be destroyed, it did not mean that the inhabitants would need to be slaughtered. If all of the strongest members of the kingdom were killed, then the kingdom would only be a kingdom in name. If Jian Chen was strong enough to go against 5 Heaven Saint Masters by himself and win, then even if the Chengon Kingdom were to pool together every single Heaven Saint Master, they would still not have a good chance of winning. In this moment, Chen Yun's heart was filled with regret. If he had known Jian Chen's strength earlier, he would have stayed out of this affair completely. This has nothing to do with the Chengon Kingdom. If you have any grievances, then come after me and do not involve the innocent. Chen Yun called out behind him as he fled. Chong Wuji was overwhelmed with shock as he looked at the youngster that was Jian Chen. There was yet another sense of familiarity, but all Chong Wuji could feel at that moment was just shock. Although the 4 Heaven Saint Masters of the Pingyang Kingdom weren't relatively strong, Chen Yun was a terrifying opponent to fight against after his ascension on becoming a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master. It was only a matter of time before he became a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master. It would take a considerable amount of energy before Chong Wuji could even dream of fighting him to a standstill. He never would have imagined that the youth in front of him would be able to not only sever the arm of Chen Yun, but to also force him to run with his tail tucked between his legs.
Just who is he? I have never seen such a young Heaven Saint Master before. No matter how much I look at him, I feel as if I know him from somewhere. Chang Wuji was utterly confused as he thought to himself. This youth was far too strong, causing him to feel extremely curious on who he could be. But Chang Wuji made no attempt to leave. The 4 Heaven Saint Masters of the Pingyang Kingdom had cut off the 4 limbs of Chang Yang-hu, causing a rift of pure hatred between him and them. Today, if he did not behead the heads of the 4, then there would be no way that Chang Wuji would be leaving from this spot. The escape of Qian Yun had caused the remaining 4 Heaven Saint Masters to fall into despair. Qian Yun was a figure of absolute strength and dominance. With his departure, there would be no way for the 4 to have even the most remote of chances on stopping Jian Chen. At this moment, the origin energy of the sword spirits had already flew at the 4 men once more in an attempt to ruthlessly cut off their heads. The 4 Heaven Saint Masters had not yet discovered just how strong the origin energy was for themselves. So instead of evading, they began to use their Earth Tier battle skills and charged to fight Jian Chen. Right now, they could only fight with the last of their strength. The advanced Earth Tier battle skill was their strongest option left remaining to them. With a look of disdain, Jian Chen's origin energy split apart into 4 blades. When the 2 sides clashed, the Saint Force from the 4 Saint weapons instantly blew outward with an explosive amount of force. The Heaven Saint Masters were sent flying back while the energy from the blast destroyed the entire ground around them. PCC. As soon as they clashed, the 4 Heaven Saint Masters began to spit out blood from their mouths. In an instant, their faces paled as they looked at the new jagged edge on their Saint weapons from where the origin energy had made contact with it. And no, this isn't possible. Just how could a Heaven Saint Master destroy another Heaven Saint Master's Saint weapon? One of the 4 cried out in terror while the other 3 were in mute shock. Instead of saying something, Jian Chen continued to glare at them with his cold eyes. The wind blowing around him began to pick up in speed and ferocity before propelling him forward with alarming speed. In a flash, he had arrived at the 4 Heaven Saint Masters 30 meters away and lashed out with his origin energy-formed sword. As the sword came down, a flash of azure and violet could just barely be seen. 2 of the Heaven Saint Masters had been too fatigued to fight anymore and had their heads lopped off. However, instead of dying, their heads looked in horror at Jian Chen before a layer of energy sent them flying away into the sky. Propelling himself even faster with his wind element, Jian Chen thrashed out with his left hand at the 2 heads. Making contact, both heads immediately began to vibrate from the blow, scattering their spirits and killing them completely. A Heaven Saint Master was not as frail as an Earth Saint Master. They were capable of controlling the energy of the world itself and boasted a superior spirit than anyone below them. If one wanted to kill a Heaven Saint Master, they would need to extinguish the spirit. The 2 beheaded bodies fell from the sky with blood gushing out from their necks along with the listless 2 heads Jian Chen had just blasted. The death of 2 of their comrades came as a deadly shock to the remaining 2 Heaven Saint Masters. Looking at Jian Chen with terrified expressions, their hearts had already begun to spiral into depression. It hadn't even been long enough to boil a cup of tea since the battle had begun, but in that time, the strongest of the 5 Heaven Saint Masters had fled, the weakest 2 had been killed, and the remaining 2 had lost their fighting spirits. The enemy himself had been completely unharmed, a feat that left the other 2 trembling in total fear. After killing 2 Heaven Saint Masters, Jian Chen continued on and returned to the last 2 with his blade ready to strike. The last 2 survivors were heavily injured, but when they saw Jian Chen coming at them, they both blanched in horror before crying out, "Run!" Not a single speck of their fighting spirit remained. Snorting, Jian Chen flew even faster after them. With his wind element, he was capable of matching their speeds almost effortlessly. Waving his right hand, the origin energy he was wielding shot toward the 2 Heaven Saint Masters' heads. One of the Heaven Saint Masters turned around abruptly and activated his Earth Tier battle skill as he slashed at Jian Chen. When the 2 forces collided, yet another explosion could be seen while the Heaven Saint Master took advantage of the shockwave to propel him even farther away from Jian Chen. However, there was a new jagged chip on his Saint weapon, causing the man to cough out another mouthful of blood in pain. At the same moment, another flash of color be seen. Jian Chen's second strike came as fast as his first strike, and before the Heaven Saint Master could get out of range from Jian Chen, the origin energy sliced through his throat like bean curd. With lightning-quick speed, Jian Chen's left hand shot forward and clapped the man's detached head, destroying his spirit from the inside with a special attack. Jian Chen took back the origin energy into his body and extended a finger on his right hand.
All of the blood that had splayed out from the newly killed man instantly formed a blade that shot toward the final Heaven Saint Master.
Caught off guard, the Heaven Saint Master felt something pierce through his chest from behind.
Before he could even howl in pain, the air in front of him began to glow red as a sword made of fire suddenly began to expand and form a sea of fire that devoured even the skies.
Not good. The Heaven Saint Master turned pale in fright. Waving his saint weapon, he tried to scatter the flames to reveal a path through. But he had not accounted that another flame sword would take shape right behind him and easily cut off his head.
With a raise of his hand, a crossbolt covered with a dark glow shot forward and speared through the head with a bloody aftereffect.
And just like that, all 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang Kingdom were killed. As soon as the explosions on the battlefield had ended, the entire world seemed to have gone quiet. The myriad of soldiers beneath Jian Chen were still on the ground in a pile of corpses.
The blood of many had dyed the earth a bloody red and filled the air with its pungent smell.
Chong Wuji himself could only stand dumbly in midair. He was utterly shocked to the point of not even being able to talk. In almost no time at all, the 4 Heaven Saint Masters had been killed without the youth sustaining any injuries at all. Something like this would surprise anyone. Just then, the 4 heads of the Heaven Saint Masters began to float around while Chong Wuji watched. Let them float on top of the walls. Jian Chen spoke. Despite killing the 4 as revenge for his elder brother, he still did not feel happy. I thank Sire for his assistance. Chong Wuji's voice trembled with emotion as he spoke. If there was such a mysterious figure assisting the Jessan Kingdom, the kingdom would surely improve among the ranks of all the kingdoms nearby. Staying silent, Jian Chen looked back to the stronghold.
Waving his hand, the ruins of the stronghold walls began to tremble for a moment before parts of the 50-meter-tall walls began to float into the air. With a bright glow of light surrounding the pieces, the debris began to smash into the stronghold itself one after another.
Bang! 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 As the pieces smashed into the stronghold, the entire area began to shudder as if an earthquake had caused a nearby mountain to shatter apart. Under Jian Chen's control, the 50-meter-tall stronghold wall fell over onto the stronghold, causing serious structural damage to it. At that moment, the entire wall had finally fell to Jian Chen's might along with the stronghold itself. Everyone watching had been stunned into a dumb silence. Even Chong Wuji had his mouth wide open. The youth right in front of him was far too strong if he could easily destroy such a large stronghold. Although he was only a Heaven Saint Master, he had easily destroyed the building as easily as if he was knocking over a house of cards. Chapter 405, Strong Assisting Army, 1. This stronghold had protected the Pingyang Kingdom for many years and had weathered many storms, but it had been easily destroyed by Jian Chen. With the stronghold destroyed, Jian Chen could see the million remaining soldiers who were staring back at Jian Chen blankly. A look of abject horror and dread could be seen from their eyes at the floating figure of Jian Chen. The stronghold of the Pingyang Kingdom had been reduced to rubble and the 4 Heaven Saint Masters killed. This was a catastrophic blow to the Pingyang Kingdom. It had severely undermined the strength of the Pingyang Kingdom, and the death of the 4 Heaven Saint Masters was an irrevocably irreversible disaster that would also destroy the morale of their fighters. A Heaven Saint Master's existence was the pillar of strength for a kingdom. They were symbols of strength and honor with many years of fighting experience that countless of soldiers could rely on. With their victory, the soldiers would be confident. With their death, they would all lose any fighting spirit. Giving one last final glare at the million soldiers, Jian Chen began to ascend into the air. Within the next instant, Jian Chen streaked toward the center of the Pingyang Kingdom. Chong Wuji looked in the direction where Jian Chen had disappeared to with an apprehensive mutter. Just where is he going to cause trouble now? The Imperial Palace of the Pingyang Kingdom? On the way, Jian Chen continued to push his speed to the max as the wind element covered his entire body. The scenery whizzed by him along with cities of all size as he continued to travel toward the city with the Imperial Palace. The Imperial Palace of the Pingyang Kingdom was about 7,000 kilometers away from the stronghold, meaning it would take 6 hours for Jian Chen to be able to fly there. 2 hours after Jian Chen's departure, the million-soldier assault force had gathered 10 kilometers away from the northern stronghold of the Jessan Kingdom. This was just in range for the middle-tier magical crystal cannons. At this moment, the soldiers had already completely assembled and were now waiting for the signal to start the besiegement. The 80-meter-tall stronghold had already been worn down to a terrible state. Many areas of the stronghold had already collapsed without anyone being able to enter. By the stronghold gates, the tempered steel doors had already plenty of indents and holes in them. They were so damaged that the gates could no longer open by themselves normally. On top of the stronghold walls were several armored soldiers that walked around anxiously. Each one of them had a sallow and dried-up expression that had definitely seen better days. It appears our Jessan kingdom cannot escape from calamity now. There are 1 million soldiers standing out there ready to attack us, and another 2 million back within the strongholds of the Pingyang kingdom. With our measly 800,000 soldiers gathered here, we have no power to stop them.
One of the armored elders spoke with a sigh.
As of right now, our northern walls have 50 middle-tier magical crystal cannons and 200 primary-tier magical crystal cannons that are no better than scrap metal now. If we continue to use them, it would be a bigger danger to ourselves and would deplete our monster core supply. We cannot keep this on for much longer. Another heavily bandaged person spoke dejectedly. However long we can last will be our legacy.
Even if we are to die here, we will not let them pass easily. One of the injured middle-aged man spoke with his eyes radiating bloodlust.
Seeing the look on the man's face, the armored soldier to his side let out a long sigh. Chongyang Ba, I know your son was captured by the Pingyang kingdom, but you needn't worry. Senior Wuji is far too strong. He'll bring Chongyang Hu back. Chongyang Ba had a grievous look on his face as he lamented. There are rumors saying that Chongyang Hu had all 4 limbs hacked off and is now a cripple. Even if he returns, what will be the point? He will be living a life worse than death. Hearing this, the surrounding people let out a sigh. Although a strong enough Radiant Saint Master would be able to grow back the limbs, a Radiant Saint Master of that level was extremely rare to come by in the Tianyuan continent. Even if they were able to find one, the Chongyang clan's influence was not even remotely close enough to bug a Radiant Saint Master of that level. In short, Chongyang Hu had a nearly nil chance of returning to his previous state. Chongyang Ba, don't forget about your 4th child, Chongyang Xiangtian.
At the age of 15, he was able to condense and for a saint weapon.
With his genius talent, he will definitely come back home with a strength no weaker than his eldest brother. Another armored man consoled. He was one of the 4 greatest clans within Lore City and was good friends with the Chongyang clan. Upon hearing the name of his 4th child, Chongyang Ba sighed. A few years ago, because of the power of the Hua Yun sect, the youngest child had been forced to leave home before he had even turned 16. Several years had passed now without any letter or information, leaving Chongyang Ba to not even know if his child was still alive or not. Just then, a young armored youth came forward with a smile. Dear friends, I couldn't help but overhear you talk about Chongyang Xiangtian. Do you think I could hear more of his past achievements? Being able to create a saint weapon at the age of 15. How incredible! I was only able to make mine when I was 18 years old. I must admit I am curious to what type of person he is. Upon seeing this youth come forward, the other commanders began to call out to him enthusiastically. Dear Ming Dong, if you are that curious, then allow me to explain the story from the very beginning. An armored elder smiled. Explaining the story in a detailed manner, he talked about Chongyang Xiangtian's genius talent. As a saint, he was able to defeat several other saints and a great saint. An achievement like this had even earned the praise of the king, but because of the Hua Yun sect's influence, Jian Chen had been forced to leave from his home. Chongyang Xiangtian was only 15 by the time he left. It has been several years since his departure, but we don't even know if he is even in the Jessan kingdom. If he is no weaker than his eldest brother, then he would be a great saint master at the very least. The armored soldier sighed.
Hua Yun sect. The armored youth muttered under his breath with an amazing glare before calming himself quickly.
Leader Chongyang, your son will definitely return home safely. Chongyang Ba sighed with sorrow. That much is no longer important. I'm afraid in the next few days, my Chongyang clan may no longer exist. Even if he returns, it will be to bury his family. If my Xianger is still alive, I sincerely hope he does not return so that he may avoid seeing this calamity. Please don't worry, Lord Chongyang. I will definitely protect the Chongyang clan with my entire strength. If I cannot, then I will beg my Uncle Tian once more. The youth spoke grimly but honestly. Upon hearing the youth mention his uncle, the others began to light up. Dear Ming Dong, Is your Uncle Tion very strong?
The extent I do not know, but if my Uncle Tion were to participate, then preventing this army in front of us would be no problem to him. Don't look at me like that. I have asked my Uncle Tion many times before, but he was unwilling to participate in the war.
The youth explained.
Hearing this, the men all looked dejected once more. Just at that moment, a cyan-robed elder came walking in with a look of bitter anguish on his face. Chongyangba's eyes lit up when he saw the return of the elder and immediately called out to him. "Chongbai, you're back.
How is Ahu? Did you bring him back?"
Chong Wuji let out a great sigh as he spoke painfully. "Leader, the young master was successfully brought back without danger to his life, but in the future." Chongyangba's instantly grew pale as he listened to Chong Wuji's words. Among the 4 children he had, the eldest son and youngest son were both geniuses of the clan. With the 4th child's current conditions unknown, the eldest son's future in jeopardy and the 3rd child with no talent in cultivation, Chongyangba wouldn't be able to find another capable child to succeed him. After a long period of time, Chongyangba stilled his emotions and let out a sigh to the sky. As long as he is alive, that is good. Whatever the future may hold, we shall see to it later. Chong Wuji had remained silent, but he shared the same sorrowful look as Chongyangba. His feelings and Chongyangba were of the same. With Chongyanghu in such a miserable state, they were both in pain. After all, Chong Wuji had looked after him growing up, and although they were not family, they were closer than family. The several men around them were quiet, but their faces were grim. The calamitous situation the Jessen kingdom was facing was unavoidable now. Before the day was over, all of their hatred would be buried with them in the ground. After some time, Chong Wuji squashed his sorrows and spoke. "Leader, I have a piece of good information I should perhaps announce. When I went to rescue the young master, I came across a mysterious youth. By himself, he was able to kill 4 of the Pingyang Kingdom's Heaven Saint Masters and completely level the entire stronghold." Immediately, every single person there was astounded. Each one of them looked at Chong Wuji in disbelief before another elder spoke. "Senior Wuji, what did you say? 4 of the Pingyang Kingdom's Heaven Saint Masters were killed by a single youth?
Is that true?"
Chong Wuji waved his head, causing the 4 bloody heads of the Heaven Saint Masters to appear onto the table from his space ring. Seeing the 4 heads, everyone immediately became silent in utter shock. Ming Dong's eyes flashed brightly as he asked, "Senior Wuji, did the person who killed these 4 say his name?" "I don't know. By the time I arrived, the young master had already been saved. It seems that there is some sort of relationship between the young master and him." Hearing this, Ming Dong had a look of contemplation on his face with his eyes flashing with curiosity. Afterward, Chong Wuji floated the heads of the 4 Heaven Saint Masters ahead of the walls for the soldiers to see and boost their morale. Suddenly, 2 furious roars could be heard as a red and yellow streak of light flew toward the Jessen Kingdom's strongholds. With a huge amount of power radiating from their bodies, the soldiers below suddenly felt themselves breathless. Chapter 406, Strong Assisting Army, 2. Suddenly, 2 furious roars could be heard as a red and yellow streak of light flew toward the Jessen Kingdom strongholds. With a huge amount of power radiating from their bodies, the soldiers below suddenly felt themselves breathless. 2 of the Heaven Saint Masters sent to protect the army had instantly gone berserk when they saw the heads. Stepping forward bravely, Chong Wuji prepared himself to stop the 2 Heaven Saint Masters. At the same time, another ripple of energy surged from within the stronghold as another Heaven Saint Master stood by Chong Wuji's side. The newcomer was in yet another elder with white hair that flew about in the wind haphazardly. Although ruffled-looking, this was the headmaster of the Jessen Kingdom's Kargath Academy, Kafir. When the 2 Heaven Saint Masters saw the floating heads of the 4 dead men on the Jessen Kingdom's stronghold walls, their entire bodies began to shudder and shake. Combined with the 2 Heaven Saint Masters Chong Wuji had killed earlier, that had meant the Pingyang Kingdom had now lost a total of 6 Heaven Saint Masters. A loss of this magnitude was far too much for the Pingyang Kingdom to accept. The 4 Heaven Saint Masters stared at each other with furious eyes, but not a single word was said. With a ripple of energy, the already teetering gates of the stronghold had begun to shake once more. Chong Wuji and Kafir had both experienced countless of battles and were injured after such a prolonged war. At their peak, they were 5th cycle Heaven Saint Masters, but previously, Kafir had been struck through the chest with an explosive amount of Saint force,
greatly damaging his inner organs. Kafir, you stand back. I'll deal with them. Chong Wuji snarled as a dangerous gleam took over his eyes.
In a sudden explosion of power, his fighting strength suddenly tripled at the sight of one of his opponents charging straight for Kafir, and instantly went to protect him.
While Chong Wuji wasn't fully recovered, he was still considerably strong. Not only was he able to block the two Pingyang Kingdom Heaven Saint Masters, but he had the advantage.
He must be using some strange method in order to empower himself.
The two Heaven Saint Masters clearly understood that Chong Wuji had managed to strengthen himself. But Chong Wuji remained silent, knowing that he couldn't continue at this pace forever. It would require his entire concentration so that he could continue fighting. After several exchanges, one of the Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang Kingdom had already been forced to take damage from one of Chong Wuji's Earth-tier battle skills. All that remained was the other Heaven Saint Master, who immediately felt the pressure on him. Kafir looked at the battle with a pale face. With his inner organs nearly completely destroyed, he had already lost his ability to fight in the meantime. Despite his willingness to fight, he could only stand and watch from the sidelines without being able to join in. "Headmaster, please come down to heal." A middle-aged man walked up to Kafir's side. This concerned man was the vice headmaster of Kargath Academy, Bai En.
Kafir shook his head. "The wounds on me are far too heavy. Even the Radiant Saint Masters within the fort are unable to heal me.
Even if they could, they have expended far too much energy these past few days and are now powerless. Headmaster, please don't worry. Senior Wuji is extremely strong. He will definitely beat the Pingyang Kingdom people." Bai En consoled. Shaking his head again, Kafir spoke. "His situation isn't too different from me. All of the Radiant Saint Masters within the Jesson Kingdom have been scattered to the cardinal strongholds, but even they aren't enough to compare to the might of our enemies. The wounds Chong Wuji suffered surely haven't recovered yet. Even if he were to heavily injure the two Heaven Saint Masters, it'd be of no use with the army of Radiant Saint Masters they have with them. If we do not kill them quickly, then they'll just heal themselves up." First form of the wild python. A large roar could be heard as Chong Wuji's body began to exude saint force in violent waves after waves.
The saint weapon in his hand ascended into the air before a giant amount of pressure blanketed the area as if the entire world was under his control.
The entire world began to darken as a fierce gale began to blow. Sand blew everywhere, covering the skies with a grey mist as if foretelling the end of the world. This is his Heaven-tier battle skill, Retreat. The two Heaven Saint Masters blanched in shock.
Without any further delay, they quickly began to fly backward.
Unfortunately, only one of them had been able to escape with their life. The other one had been locked into place due to the Heaven-tier battle skill's might. With the restriction from the battle skill, he had no chance of moving at all. During the initialization period of the Heaven-tier battle skill, Chong Wuji had let out a roar before releasing the earth-destroying energy down onto the head of the stuck Heaven Saint Master, cleaving him in two. The surplus power from the Heaven-tier battle skill continued on down to the ground, splitting the earth underneath, leaving behind a 10-meter-long rift. The surrounding soldiers from the Pingyang Kingdom were afflicted by the attack as well, many of them dying. After the usage of the Heaven-tier battle skill, Chong Wuji's body began to sway side to side violently before ultimately falling to the ground.
His already pale face was now devoid of color and looked disease-stricken.
The final remaining Heaven Saint Master from the Pingyang Kingdom had a look of dejection on his face. This war could be considered a heavy loss for the Pingyang Kingdom with already 7 Heaven Saint Masters dead. This battle alone had ended in their loss despite their advantage in numbers as well. Suddenly, a formidable amount of energy could be felt from behind as several strong-looking people came flying through the air. "Pingyang Kingdom, our Hidden Dragon Kingdom have come to provide assistance in your invasion." An elderly voice suddenly called out. Upon hearing the identity of the newcomer, every single person within the Jesson Kingdom instantly fell into despair. Even the headmaster of Kargath Academy sighed. "The heavens have forgotten about our Jesson Kingdom."
Chong Wuji looked off toward the 4 flying Heaven Saint Masters in despair as well before sighing and returning to the walls of the stronghold.
Kafir and him were the remaining 2 Heaven Saint Masters left protecting the northern stronghold of the Jesson Kingdom. With the both of them having no more strength, they would not be able to last against 5 united Heaven Saint Masters. Quickly, the Pingyang Kingdom and Hidden Dragon Kingdom converged together. Looking at the Heaven Saint Masters from the other kingdom, The remaining Heaven Saint Master from the Pingyang Kingdom had a gleeful smile on his face. Could it be your hidden dragon kingdom has already broken through the western stronghold? Laughing out loud, one of the elders from the hidden dragon kingdom smiled. Naturally. We've already broken through the defenses and slain 2 Heaven Saint Masters while the third one fled. As of right now, our army is marching toward the Jesson Kingdom's imperial city. We heard that the northern stronghold was being quite stubborn, so the 4 of us decided to come as support. I'm convinced that the eastern stronghold will be soon destroyed by the Blue Wind Kingdom. The elder from the Hidden Dragon Kingdom spoke with a loud voice to attack the morale of the soldiers within the stronghold. Sure enough, as soon as they heard those words, many of the soldiers began to lose their fighting courage. Several of them had dropped to the ground with stony face while others had already started to strip themselves of their armor and adopted a surrendering position. Jesson Kingdom, lay down your arms and we will spare you. The elder spoke out from midair. His voice was magnanimously grand from way high in the air. Our Jesson Kingdom has no cowards. We would rather die than be slaves. One of the commanders called out without fear of death. Impudence! The elder's eyes took on a dangerous glint as he waved his hand. A yellow-colored sword suddenly materialized out of thin air before flying straight for the commander. Bang! The earth element sword struck the commander instantly and killed him without delay. Commander Ling! Commander Ling! The commanders nearby began to cry out grievously at the death of their friend. Chong Wuji and Kafir both sighed before giving each other a knowing look. Chapter 407, Strong Assisting Army, 3. The Hidden Dragon Kingdom looked at each other first and then the group. They knew neither if they were friends or foes, or even if they were just random travelers. We are the Hidden Dragon Kingdom. Where might your group be from? A Hidden Dragon Kingdom Heaven Saint Master asked with a polite voice, already sensing just how strong they were. We are from the Qin Huang Kingdom. The middle-aged man spoke. Qin Huang Kingdom? Several of the men from the Hidden Dragon Kingdom looked confused for a moment since they had never heard of such a Qin Huang Kingdom. Suddenly, an elder from the Hidden Dragon Kingdom realized something and spoke out in awe. The Qin Huang Kingdom, the very same one as one of the 8 great powers on the Tianyuan continent, the Qin Huang Kingdom? Immediately, every single person was in awe. Even Chong Wuji and Kafir both looked at the 5 men from the Qin Huang Kingdom in surprise. Within the Tianyuan continent, the 3 great empires reigned supreme among the strongest nations within the continent. Each and every single one of the 3 were terrifyingly powerful, and under the 3 great empires, there were the 8 great powers with influence that was just as awe-inspiring. The Qin Huang Kingdom were one of these 8 great powers and had a wide influence that allowed it to remain at the top of the pyramid. The elder with the tiger cub in its hand nodded. Correct. We are the imperial advisors of the Qin Huang Kingdom. After verifying their identity, the Hidden Dragon and Pingyang Kingdom immediately began to compliment and flatter them since they knew that an imperial advisor of the Qin Huang Kingdom was surely of very high status. Within the 8 great powers, the imperial advisors of the Qin Huang Kingdom were especially amazing. Only those with an outstanding talent within their generation would be able to become one, and they were formidable opponents to those within the same level of strength. Furthermore, each one had at least a single heaven-tier battle skill, meaning their level of military might was beyond the Heaven Saint Masters gathered here. Now knowing the identity of these 5, Chong Wuji and Kafir were both astounded. They never would have thought that they would meet 5 imperial advisors from one of the 8 great powers. This was truly a rare encounter. They didn't say anything since the imperial advisors were most likely just passing through the area. After all, the quarrel between the Jesson Kingdom and Hidden Dragon Kingdom was beneath the notice of such a kingdom. As one of the 8 great powers, the Qin Huang Kingdom had many vassal states that were already stronger than the Jesson Kingdom. It could even be said that every single one of the vassal states could defeat the Jesson Kingdom if need be. Smiling, the 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Hidden Dragon Kingdom began to greet the Qin Huang Kingdom imperial advisors respectfully in hopes that they could somehow form some sort of relationship with them. If they could pull this off, then they would gain many benefits from such a friendship. But the men from the Qin Huang Kingdom looked around without a smile. With a simple glaze around himself, the elder holding the tiger cub spoke. Is this the stronghold of the Jesson Kingdom? Everyone was confused on why such a high-ranking noble from the Qin Huang Kingdom would ask such a question. Despite their confusion, no one dared ask why. Instead, the Pingyang Kingdom Heaven Saint Master spoke. Correct, that is the northern fort of the Jessen Kingdom. Who are you? The elder with the white tiger cub asked. This one is Xiong Bao Tai from the Xiong family of the Pingyang clan. The Heaven Saint Master smiled. Instantly losing interest, the elder with the tiger cub looked to the pale-faced and seriously injured Chong Wuji and Kafir. Then you must be the men from the Jessen Kingdom. Kafir and Chong Wuji looked at each other with confusion as they tried to figure out just why an imperial advisor from the Qin Huang Kingdom would ask such a thing. Their Jessen Kingdom was far beneath the notice of such a great kingdom, and the imperial advisors wouldn't even bother with such a tiny conflict as this one. Correct. We are from the Jessen Kingdom. Chong Wuji spoke. Although their kingdom was on the verge of destruction, he did not wish to offend anyone. Still holding on to the tiger cub, the elder finally let out a kind smile. It seems that we came just in time then. By the order of our imperial protector, the 5 of us are here to provide assistance for the Jessen Kingdom. If there is anything you need, then we will follow your orders. At the words of the imperial advisor, everyone was immediately stunned as if they had heard something unbelievable. Both the Hidden Dragon and Pingyang Kingdom Heaven Saint Masters both instantly blanched as their faces grew dark. They never would have thought that the Jessen Kingdom and the gigantic power that was the Qin Huang Kingdom would have a friendship between them to the point where the imperial protector of the Qin Huang Kingdom would even send 5 imperial advisors to help assist them. This was an earth-breaking piece of information that would stun anyone. An imperial protector was a status that left no doubt on people's mind regarding their power. With an imperial protector standing right behind the Jessen Kingdom, then even the 4 kingdoms fighting against it would obediently retreat. That was because the ire of the Qin Huang Kingdom was far too much for them to try and provoke. While each one of the kingdoms had 2 million soldiers and a decent amount of Heaven Saint Masters, it was nothing in comparison to the Qin Huang Kingdom, who would only need a handful of elite soldiers to completely overwhelm them. Chong Wuji and Kafir were speechless and utterly dazed by this response. They could have sworn that they misheard something. These 5 imperial advisors from the Qin Huang Kingdom were here to assist them? Furthermore, they were ordered to buy an imperial protector? Then the 2 felt suspicious. Just how did the Jessen Kingdom establish a friendship with one of the imperial protectors of one of the 8 great powers? We're going. The 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Hidden Dragon Kingdom had no other alternatives. With a low growl, they began to retreat while the Pingyang Kingdom's Heaven Saint Master followed behind without hesitation. But the elder with the tiger cub suddenly gave a look to the men behind him, signaling them silently. Immediately, they chased after the 5 Heaven Saint Masters. The Heaven Saint Masters blanched before one of them spoke out impatiently. Honored imperial advisors, we have no grievances with you. Why must you chase after us? There was a hint of panic in his voice. They had received no verbal response. Instead, the 4 imperial advisors burst into action, and the 9 began to fight in a spectacular fashion. At this moment, the soldiers from the Pingyang Kingdom had begun to feel the aftermath from the extreme ripples of energy above, killing the masses in large amounts. Those who were able to become an imperial advisors were the elite among the elite and had many skills that allowed them to easily fight against those of the same level. Even a 3rd cycle Heaven Saint Master could kill a regular 4th cycle Heaven Saint Master. Despite it being a 5 versus 4 match, the Qin Huang Kingdom held the upper hand and were winning against the 5. Chong Wuji and Kafir were now staring at the battle with eyes wide open. They could only describe this sensation they were feeling as inconceivable, as if they were dreaming instead of living. In the middle of nowhere, the Jessen Kingdom had suddenly obtained a strong assisting army along with the imperial protector of the Qin Huang Kingdom. As for the walls of the stronghold, many of the grey armored soldiers had their fighting spirits roused once more. Their eyes lit up with emotion before turning sharp like swords as they began to shake with excitement. The battle in front of them was extraordinarily fierce and caused waves of Saint force to splash over the battlegrounds. Not too long after, the Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang and Hidden Dragon Kingdom were injured, and shortly after that, they were captured. Seal their inner Saint force. An elder called out before melding his fingers into a seal, and then using a strange technique to seal the 5 Saint force. With their strength sealed, the 5 Heaven Saint Masters had gone ashen with fear. Now that their strengths were gone, they were like a group of sitting ducks with no chance of escape. The 4 imperial advisors took the 5 sealed men to the elder with the white tiger cub. Everyone had attributed him to be both the strongest and the leader of the group. Flying over to Chong Wuji and Kafir, the elder with the tiger cub spoke. This elder is named Xiao Tian. From here on forth, we are yours to command for whichever purposes you need us for, so don't hold back. These hidden Dragon Kingdom people are yours as you see fit." Chong Wuji and Kafir were both paralyzed with emotions. Profusely thanking the 5 imperial advisors, they later sent the 5 sealed Heaven Saint Masters from the opposing kingdoms to the guillotine to cut off their heads. Afterward, a total of 9 Heaven Saint Master heads hung from the walls of the northern stronghold. These Heaven Saint Masters had the blood of countless of soldiers from the Jesson Kingdom. They had also killed 2 experts from the eastern stronghold, making their sins utterly unpardonable. If they weren't killed, then the people within the kingdom would bear a grudge for all eternity. Within the stronghold, the commanders of the northern stronghold all gathered together in order to pay their respects to the 5 imperial advisors from the Qin Huang Kingdom. 4 hours later, the imperial advisors had all split ways. Xiao Tian carried the tiger cub with him to the eastern stronghold while the 4 others split into groups of 2 headed toward the western and southern stronghold. Before leaving, they had left behind several radiant spirit pills so that Chong Wuji and Kafir could both recover their strength and continue protecting the northern stronghold. Chapter 408. Valiantly Storming the Stronghold, 1. The 5 Heaven Saint Masters from the Qin Huang Kingdom didn't stay at the stronghold for too long. As per the decree from the Imperial Protector, they were to assist the Jesson Kingdom against any hostile action, so they would figure out the situation of the kingdom before splitting paths. After knowing what to do, the Imperial advisors split paths in order to move to the other 3 strongholds. The northern stronghold in the Jesson Kingdom would be defended by Chong Wuji and Kafir after using the radiant spirit pill given to them to recover their health. Thanks to the pills, their health had been quickly stabilized and their bodies healed at a fast rate. The Pingyang Kingdom's Heaven Saint Masters killed one by one had been a huge detriment to the opposing army's morale. Without any further motivation, the army drew back and out of distance. Presently, the situation within the northern stronghold had been resolved, but with the 4 united kingdoms still against them, danger was still imminent. At this moment, the Pingyang Kingdom had an unexpected guest. After some time, Jian Chen had finally arrived at the imperial palace and strode in expressionlessly. Despite the kingdom being involved in a war, the palace was filled with people without any anxiety to be seen. "Halt, who goes there?" As soon as Jian Chen entered through the palace gates, 2 guards appeared to stop him. Jian Chen's eyes flashed once as an azure and violet sword qi shot forth from his fingers and instantly shot through the throats of the guards. Without a sound, the 2 guards fell to the ground dead. The other people within the palace immediately looked on in surprise. "How brazen! Are you here to cause trouble? Arrest him!" 30 imperial palace guards instantly appeared from both sides. There was no hesitation in their actions as they simultaneously rushed at Jian Chen with their saint weapons. With a calm look still, Jian Chen raised a finger, causing another jet of sword qi to appear on it. Stabbing at the 30 guards, he managed to pierce through each and every single one of their throats, causing a small finger-sized hole to appear in them. Blood instantly splayed in the air like the image of a flower. Without even able to cry out in pain, the guards all fell to the ground in a flash of blood and qi. As they lay on the ground, their blood began to pool underneath their bodies. Immediately, a whistling sound could be heard as one of the palace guards began to sound the alarm. This alarm was long and panicked, meaning it was the highest possible warning throughout the kingdom. Not too long after, a wave of hurried footsteps could be heard coming from within the palace as if there was a battle taking place inside. At the same time, the closed gates to the palace slowly swung open as a couple of armored soldiers stepped out in formation. Each one was expressionless, but their eyes contained a frosty glare as if barely holding their honed killing intents as elite soldiers. Right in front of this squadron of elite soldiers, a white-armored middle-aged man came riding forward on a Class 3 magical beast mount. His eyes swept across the dead bodies of the 30 guards and then right onto Jian Chen. With a wave of his hand, he barked out an order. "Arrest him." The soldiers behind him immediately rushed forward in an attempt to hem Jian Chen in. Sneering, Jian Chen waved his fingers, allowing sword qi to gather once more. Even against such a formidable amount of sword qi, none of the soldiers had any hesitation and continued on. But before they could respond to Jian Chen's next move, he had already stabbed several of them through the throats. In an instant, another 14 soldiers fell to the ground. The middle-aged man on top of the Class 3 magical beast mount narrowed his eyes before forming a 3-meter-long yellow spear. Leaping down from his mount, He charged toward Jian Chen and stabbed toward his throat with his spear. The middle-aged man was a first-cycle Earth Saint Master, meaning his strength was someone that was absolutely beneath Jian Chen's notice. With a wave of his finger, a jettison of sword chi shot forward and slammed against the man's long spear. Ding! Following a crisp sound, the middle-aged man's body began to violently shake as the sword chi that slammed into him forced his body to go numb from shock. Flying back through the air, he met the ground and was dragged back several meters. Another blade of sword chi formed on Jian Chen's fingertips and immediately flew toward the man's throat before he could even get back up. Ho! The Black Panther that was the man's mount immediately let out a powerful snarl before charging toward Jian Chen. The sword chi hardened on Jian Chen's finger as he took notice of the panther. As soon as it got closer to him, his right hand flickered into motion, instantly beheading the panther's head with the sword chi blade on his finger. There were about 200 elite soldiers gathered here, but when they saw this display of strength, they were instantly terrified. Quick, sound the war drums. Sound the war drums. The remaining soldiers instantly realized that Jian Chen wasn't someone they could defend against and turned around to run back into the palace. Dong 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 dong. The war drums began to sound throughout the palace with a strong echo, allowing everyone within the palace to be able to hear them. Upon hearing the war drums, every single person within the palace was confused. They had already forgotten just how long it had been since they had last heard the war drums. After several seconds, they immediately began to react to the war drums and began to panic. Squadrons of armored soldiers began to appear throughout the palace as they rushed toward the palace gates. Even the hidden experts within the palace didn't dare delay their movements as they approached the gates as well. The two gigantic bronze lions standing in place next to the palace gates began to raise into the air due to Jian Chen's control. With a burst of azure and violet, they flew at the walls of the imperial palace. Bang! Following two loud explosions, the palace walls began to crumble away after being destroyed by the two bronze lions, revealing two large holes. Chapter 409. Valiantly Storming the Stronghold. 2. Bang! Following two loud explosions, the palace walls began to crumble away after being destroyed by the two bronze lions, revealing two large holes. Without stopping to take a rest, he levitated the same two bronze lions and began to destroy the surrounding walls. In a flash, the nearby walls to the city were beginning to crumble. Already, the entirety of the wall had been compromised and reduced to rubble. This caused the entirety of the palace to be truly shocked as squadrons of elite soldiers continued to charge forth. The experts hidden away in the palace led the charge toward the source of the destruction with cold glares. Where is the scoundrel that dares to act in such a manner toward our Pingyong kingdom? To dare cause trouble in our Pingyong kingdom's palace, you must be tired of living. Intruder, speak your name. How audacious! Even death won't pardon your crimes of destroying our imperial city. Mixed in with the furious cries of soldiers, 20 Earth Saint Masters flew toward Jian Chen's position with their saint weapons in hand, ready to attack him. Following two large explosions, the two gigantic bronze lion statues flew in a graceful arc toward the incoming people. At the same time, the rubble of the city walls began to levitate in the air before pelting the 20 Earth Saint Masters with blinding speed. These stones were reinforced by the azure and violet sword chi, meaning their offensive strength was enough to injure Heaven Saint Masters. Against such a strike, a group of Earth Saint Masters would be powerless to prevent the stones from destroying their bodies. Even with their saint weapons already poised to attack the stones, they did no damage at all. Not even within several breaths, the 20 Earth Saint Masters had died in battle. In the eyes of Jian Chen, only Heaven Saint Masters had a chance of fighting with him. Earth Saint Masters may be high-leveled experts within the continent, but to him, they had utterly no chance at all in even harming or getting close to him. The sounds of heavy footsteps could be heard as the elite squadron of soldiers came pouring in like a tidal wave. There were at least 1,000 people that quickly hemmed Jian Chen within a ring and glared heavily at Jian Chen. Sire, who are you and why are you destroying the palace of our Pingyong kingdom? One of the elders riding on a Class 3 magical beast spoke with a serious expression. Jian Chen looked past the elder and at the gold and red imperial palace without answering his question. But when the elder saw the 20 dead Earth Saint Masters on the ground, he grew deathly serious and grim. Sizing up the young age of Jian Chen, he couldn't help but feel a little skeptical. If such a youngster was able to eliminate 20 Earth Saint Masters, that would be utterly inconceivable. Then a realization hit him. An Earth Saint Master wouldn't be able to kill 20 Earth Saint Masters so quickly. This was the work of a Heaven Saint Master. Could this youngster right in front of him truly be a Heaven Saint Master? At this question, the elder tried to calm his heart down. If what he thought was true, then this person in front of him had a talent that was utterly terrifying. Sire, just who might you be? Why must you destroy our Pingyang Kingdom's imperial palace? The elder asked carefully once more, desperately hoping to find a way to not be an enemy to Jian Chen. Jian Chen looked to the imperial palace and spoke softly. From here on out, this imperial palace will cease to exist within the Tianyuan continent. Hearing this, the elder couldn't help but explode with anger. How arrogant! Our Pingyang Kingdom has survived within the Tianyuan continent for hundreds of years. Just how could a child destroy it? Jian Chen spoke no words and opened his hands, allowing the fire element within the world to gather within his hands and forming a bright red ray of light. In a flash, a rich firewall had formed around Jian Chen's body while also raising the temperature to be unbearable. Paling, the elder quickly cried out an order, retreat. This elder was not a Heaven Saint Master, but he had a clear understanding of their strengths. Despite all of the guards gathered here being the elite soldiers of the kingdom, they stood no chance against a Heaven Saint Master. At this command, all of the surrounding soldiers immediately began to run away from Jian Chen. It was already far too late. The fire surrounding Jian Chen's body exploded outward, transforming into a bright wall of fire that expanded throughout the area and washed over the sky with its high temperatures. The sky soon became a scorching area with no one able to breathe inside it. The plumes of fire quickly made its way around the area, engulfing many soldiers within its path. With its high temperatures, the fire quickly brought the iron armor to a fiery red before turning it into molten iron. Countless of soldiers caught by this attack began to cry out in a miserable howl. The elder on the other hand fortunately escaped from the attack and could only watch with dazed eyes. At that moment, two formidable powers flew from the palace with a furious roar. Two Heaven Saint Masters could then be seen floating overhead with a furious look at the scene. Who are you? Why are you attacking the Pingyang Kingdom? One of the Heaven Saint Masters glared at Jian Chen menacingly. Despite Jian Chen killing many of their soldiers, he had to make sure of the situation carefully. A bubble of the wind element surrounded Jian Chen, allowing him to float up into the air to meet the two Heaven Saint Masters at their level. I am from the Jesson Kingdom. Today, I will make your Pingyang Kingdom pay a heavy price for your crime. Jian Chen spoke calmly but with a hint of steel to it. Chapter 410, Underground Labyrinth. Upon hearing his response, the two Heaven Saint Masters looked at each other in surprise. Since when did the Jesson Kingdom have such a talented individual as this one? They had never heard of such a person before. Without mincing words, Jian Chen's hands grabbed at the sky. Almost instantly, two giant swords of fire materialized in his hands before shooting straight for the two Heaven Saint Masters. The final two Heaven Saint Masters of the Pingyang Kingdom decided to no longer use words to talk after realizing that Jian Chen was a member of the Jesson Kingdom. A fight was unavoidable at this point, and unless one of the two sides died, there would be no end. Deciding not to hold back, the both of them instantly brought out their saint weapons to block the fire swords. With a clanging sound, the fire swords were shattered apart and filled the sky with their residual flames. The two Heaven Saint Masters chose to use a layer of saint force to protect their bodies instead of dodging. They charged into the sea of flames toward Jian Chen. Still expressionless, Jian Chen hovered in midair while watching the two Heaven Saint Masters. Despite the flames licking away at their bodies, he was still able to clearly see them within his mind thanks to his omnipresence ability. A bright essence of pure azure and violet light began to glow on top of Jian Chen's fingers before solidifying to become a sword. Adopting a blitzkrieg strategy, he formed the origin energy in his hand to end the fight as soon as possible. As soon as the origin energy solidified, the two Heaven Saint Masters re-emerged from the sea of flames headed toward Jian Chen. Both of their saint weapons had a large amount of pressure radiating from them as they shot toward him. By a tacit agreement, both Heaven Saint Masters had agreed to use their Earth-tier battle skills on him. Jian Chen's eyes flashed brightly. Although he had lost his saint force, the chaotic force had changed his body so that it was now way stronger than before. Even his speed had received a large boost after the chaotic force. A flash of azure and violet could be seen before Jian Chen's right hand slammed the origin energy against both saint weapons of the Heaven Saint Masters.
Upon contact, a tremendous ripple of energy flew out from where the three weapons struck against each other in every direction.
Jian Chen and the two others were sent flying back because of the result. When the two Heaven Saint Masters finally stabilized themselves, they both instantly spat out a mouthful of blood. With a terrified gasp, they looked down at the saint weapon in their hands. Right in front of them, a ragged jag could be seen on their saint weapon. When a saint weapon was injured, the owner would receive a large amount of damage as a result. Looking from their weapons to each other, both Heaven Saint Masters turned to look at Jian Chen in an awestruck fashion. Then, one of the two immediately cried out, "Carry out the highest safety warning." From farther away, near the Imperial Palace, there was a group of soldiers watching the battle take place.
Among this group was an elderly man wearing a purple and gold dragon robe. The very moment he heard the words of the Heaven Saint Master, his eyes narrowed.
This purple and gold dragon-robed elder was the king of the Pingyang Kingdom. By his side were his personal bodyguards, but when each one of them heard what the Heaven Saint Master called out, their faces turned sour. "The highest safety warning? Your Majesty, quickly, into the labyrinth. Escort His Majesty to the underground labyrinth. Now, now, now." The bodyguards besides the king began to whisper to each other frantically before surrounding the king and bringing him away from sight in a flash. Within the sky, Jian Chen started to use the origin energy of the sword spirits to limit the attacks of both Heaven Saint Masters. By now, they were no longer able to do anything but desperately fend off the strikes before finally being killed by Jian Chen. With the death of the two, there was no longer anyone capable of stopping him. Descending to the ground, Jian Chen stretched out his omnipresence for a circumference of 15 kilometers. Step by step, Jian Chen drew closer to the biggest hall within the central palace. Not too long after, Jian Chen was surrounded by countless of soldiers once more like moths to a flame. These soldiers were all 100 meters away from him with looks of dread on their faces. Their legs staggered away from him as if afraid of charging toward their death. Jian Chen was not the type to continue with a massacre like this. Walking forward, he finally came to the deepest part of the central palace and walked in while the soldiers stood behind anxiously. Not a single one of them dared to follow him in. Jian Chen's slaughter of the two Heaven Saint Masters had been seen in full detail by each of the soldiers here, scaring them to the point of utter panic. Even as elite trained soldiers, they had long since been intimidated to the point of wanting to run away as far as possible. Although this was the very first time Jian Chen had been in the Imperial Palace of the Pingyang Kingdom, he had a good grasp on the inner arrangements of the place. Walking straight to the throne room, Jian Chen noticed that there was a hidden button right next to the throne. With a screeching sound after being pushed, the throne began to move back before revealing a 2-meter-wide hole that seemed to have a set of stairs leading downward. "Humph, no matter where you shoot off to, don't think that you can escape from me." Jian Chen snorted before descending into the hole. The inside of the cave was extremely dark and every 30 meters there was a night pearl illuminating the way through the darkness with a weak glow. The king nodded his head faintly. "I heard that as well, but do you think that person will be able to find this place?" The king spoke with worry. "Your Majesty, please don't worry. This labyrinth is extremely complex and can even change its layout at countless different permutations along with many different traps. Unless there is a traitor, there would be no way for the man to find this place." Another guard spoke. These were his most devoted followers who placed the king as a high importance. "Your Majesty, please do not worry. Our experts defending the strongholds will be here soon and force that man away from here without any hope." Another guard spoke. But what he didn't know was that every single one of the Pingyang Kingdom's Heaven Saint Masters had already died since the news of their death from the strongholds had not yet been heard here. Jian Chen continued to cut away obstacle after obstacle until at last, he had arrived at the deepest part of the labyrinth where a resplendent but thick steel wall could be seen. Seeing this steel wall, Jian Chen let out a cold smile before forming the origin energy on his fingers. The origin energy grew 10 meters long in length before immediately cutting through the steel wall as if it were tofu. Chapter 4:11. Sees the king within the northern stronghold of the Jessen Kingdom. It was temporarily quiet.
Every soldier was starting to treat their wounds while a few Radiant Saint Masters continued to treat everyone as much as they could with their Radiant Saint force. On the wall, several of the bandaged soldiers were out patrolling the area. With the heads of 9 enemy Heaven Saint Masters mounted on the wall, the morale of the soldiers was at an all-time high. On both sides of the wall, many blacksmiths could be seen at work trying to mend it with a variety of items laid out a meter around them, as they stripped away the damaged pieces and replaced them with newer ones. Outside the stronghold, several soldiers from the Jessan Kingdom were digging holes and burying the bodies of the dead soldiers in it. Right about now, the army from the Pingyang Kingdom were 15 kilometers away, and stood completely still without making any intentions of moving forward. After seeing the Heaven Saint Masters die right in front of them, they were far too shocked to continue attacking. Within the stronghold, 30 armored commanders were convened together with a serious expression. "Everyone, I've just received a messenger pigeon from the other 3 forts. As of now, the enemy army has broken through them and are now making their way toward the Imperial City. We have taken serious casualties, and a Heaven Saint Master has died at the hands of the enemy, with the other Heaven Saint Masters taking heavy damage. As it is, we are in a dire situation." An elder spoke grimly. Everyone's faces hardened as they listened. With the other 3 strongholds breached, if there was no more further attempts at stopping them, the Imperial City would be attacked and the Jessan Kingdom would truly be over. In my opinion, even with the Imperial advisors from the Qinhuang Kingdom helping us, it will be of no use. The difference in strength between both sides are too vast, and with just 5 people, it won't do much. Another commander spoke. "I hope that the Imperial advisors' strength will be enough to intimidate the enemy. It is in my belief that they won't dare offend the Qinhuang Kingdom, or else risk 1,000,000 elite soldiers from the Qinhuang Kingdom destroying their kingdoms. I don't believe the situation is that simple to resolve. Everyone knows that the Qinhuang Kingdom is a large distance away from us. There isn't a significant relationship between the 2 kingdoms either. I bet that the enemy will believe that the 5 Imperial advisors are faking their identities and are only just hired help for the Jessan Kingdom." You have a fair point. I can see that scenario happening. Despite the Qinhuang Kingdom's magnificent power and prestige, it won't matter much to our situation if our Imperial City is invaded. Our defense of this stronghold would be of no use and would just lead to our surrender. The commanders began to talk among each other passionately as everyone spoke about their perspective on the matter with a tone of panic. "What about this? We will send several squadrons to the other 3 forts to provide assistance. Everyone, what do you think?" An elder proposed. Hearing this, everyone's eyes narrowed before another person spoke. "But our soldier reserves are currently 3 million strong, with practically everyone injured or tired. Furthermore, there are countless of mercenaries with absolutely no discipline at all. I believe we should send the vanguards over to the other forts only. This is our only possible solution. I agree to this proposal." "That's correct. This is our only course of action now that the northern stronghold has been stabilized. The Pingyang Kingdom is down 8 Heaven Saint Masters, with only 2 of them protecting the Imperial Palace. I can bet that they won't make any rash moves and will move their army to the other 3 strongholds. While we cannot defend against the attack, we can at least delay them." After a fierce deliberation, the commanders finally came to a conclusion. The strongest and uninjured commanders would lead 2 million soldiers and split into 3 paths toward the strongholds. Even the Radiant Saint Masters were split into groups of 3. Not too long after, the 2 Heaven Saint Masters in the northern stronghold obtained new information. Before Chong Wuji and Kafir could fully recover, the 2 immediately traveled to the eastern stronghold with the rest of the Chongyang clan members. With 2 million soldiers leaving, the northern stronghold was all but empty now. All that was left were several 100,000. However, many of them were injured and/or disabled. The 2 million soldier-strong army standing right outside the northern stronghold had a dozen of its commanders gathered together with a furious look. Many of the commanders here had a senior that was one of the Heaven Saint Masters that were killed. "General Hong, what are you hesitating for? There's only the crippled and injured left in the stronghold. If you can signal the invasion, then we will be able to successfully invade the stronghold. Then, those Heaven Saint Masters of the Jessan Kingdom will lose their heads in revenge for our ancestor." "No. Our Pingyang Kingdom has already lost a devastating amount of power as a result of those 8 Heaven Saint Masters dying. Our strength isn't even a half of what it used to be. Therefore, we should be thinking about how to defend ourselves from the Jessan Kingdom instead of how to invade it."
An armored elder spoke seriously. The Pingyang kingdom had lost 8 Heaven Saint Masters. These were the pinnacle fighters of their nation, and so their deaths made their kingdom utterly powerless.
At the elder's words, another person opened his mouth.
General Hong is correct. Right now our Heaven Saint Masters are down to 2. Both of them are back within the Imperial Palace. If the Hidden Dragon Kingdom, Blue Wind Kingdom, and the Andreas Kingdom were to invade the Jessen Kingdom, who will guarantee us that they will not take advantage of our weakness and turn on our own kingdom? Could you mean that the death of our ancestor won't be avenged?
Another commander spoke with a heavy glower.
Don't worry. This time, the Jessen Kingdom will surely fall. Those Heaven Saint Masters will die soon as well. When they die, your ancestor will be avenged. Don't tell me you wish to try and kill a Heaven Saint Master with your Earth Saint Master strength? General Hong spoke coldly. At this, the general with the slain ancestor sighed.
He knew that he did not possess the strength to do such a thing.
The army of the Pingyang Kingdom had no reason to attack the Jessen Kingdom's stronghold. All they could do was to stand 30 kilometers away and wait. Not too long, however, the Pingyang Kingdom's stronghold finally came with some information from the Imperial Palace. The report said that an unknown Heaven Saint Master had entered the borders of the Pingyang Kingdom and had started to lay waste to the Imperial Palace. The moment this piece of information was announced to everyone, the commanders let out aghast looks before quickly ushering the army back as quickly as they could. In the underground labyrinth, the king of the Pingyang Kingdom and his several bodyguards were looking closely at a sealed space where a jade table could be seen. This jade was an oddity within the continent, and was called the Jades of the Motherly Twins. There was 2 pieces to this set, and in the case one of them broke, then the other piece would disintegrate quickly afterward. One of the jade pieces was located in the underground labyrinth while the other was in a top-secret location. Only a select few knew of its existence, and once the danger to the kingdom was removed, then the men on the outside would destroy the jade piece and notify the hidden king. Right now, every single one of the bodyguards and the king were desperately waiting for the jade table to shatter into pieces. Suddenly, the king and his bodyguards could hear a strange noise heading in their direction. As they turned to look, the steel wall protecting them suddenly began to glow with an azure and violet ray of light. Everyone immediately paled in fear and despair as they looked at the lights. They didn't know just what they were, but a deep premonition began to well up within them. What is that? Even the king found it hard to maintain his calm composure. Not a single person answered the king, however. Hidden away in their spots, they could only stare intensely at the hole in front of them. The azure and violet gleams of light began to move around before spreading out all over the steel wall. As the light washed over the walls, cracks could be seen spreading throughout the steel material. No, he's breaking the walls even more. One of the soldiers cried out in pure fear. The steel wall was built to be 10 meters thick and could withstand even a Heaven Saint Master. But right now, it had already been smashed apart by their enemy. Just how strong was this invader? The soldiers and king began to stagger back in fear as they watched the 2 lights continue to destroy the steel wall in front of them. Impossible. This isn't any regular wall to be destroyed. Is our enemy a saint ruler? The king couldn't hide any of his trepidation now, with his voice struggling to stay coherent. Bang! At the moment the king had spoken, another explosion could be heard as pieces of the wall came flying off before crumbling to the ground. A fierce shockwave could be felt as each steel piece slammed into the ground, and the wall suddenly gained a 2-meter-tall hole. The crisp sounds of footsteps could be heard walking toward them. A figure dressed in a white robe with blood on it slowly came into view. This person wasn't old by any means and could be no older than his early 20s. There was barely an inch of hair on him, but there was a regal air to his figure. The king and the other soldiers all looked at the figure in fear while their legs continued to bring them backward. Who are you? The king asked. Jian Chen said no words and stalked toward the king with his cold eyes piercing straight into him. The king of the Pingyang Kingdom was a senile old man with a purple and gold dragon robe and crown. He had even a noble air to him, but under the piercing eyes of Jian Chen, he was absolutely cowed. Striding forward, Jian Chen was soon at the corner the group was hiding in. Protect the king! One of the guards cried out before throwing away his fear and charging at Jian Chen. With one man leading the charge, the others dared not fall behind. With one final breath of hesitation, they too flew at Jian Chen. Chapter 412. Pillaging the treasury without any rush. Jian Chen formed a bright blade of sword qi on his finger and completely massacred all of the great Saint Masters. From this group, there were only 3 Earth Saint Masters that were fortunate enough to survive the initial attack. Your Majesty, please escape. We will hold him off. The 3 Earth Saint Masters were by no means cowards. They were willing to throw away their lives in order to try and stop Jian Chen from attacking their king. But the king only looked at the 3 soldiers willing to die for him with remorse. He had no intentions of running since he knew that escaping now was futile and would only expend energy needlessly. Stop! The king suddenly called out to the 3 soldiers powerlessly. Looking to Jian Chen with a grieved look, he spoke. This king has already been forced into a state where I cannot run away. If you could please tell me just who you are, then I will be content to die. Jian Chen stared passively at the king for a moment before speaking. Who I am is not important. Just know that I am from the Jessen kingdom. As I expected, you really are from the Jessen kingdom. The king sighed before looking back to Jian Chen. It seems this king's decision on joining the other 3 kingdoms to attack the Jessen kingdom was the wrong choice to make. I had been 90% sure that the Jessen kingdom wouldn't have such a hidden talent who could storm my Pingyang kingdom's imperial palace and cause me to end up like this. AI. The king looked even more ragged than before, as if he had spontaneously aged. This king has already fallen. Do as you seem fit as punishment, whether that is to kill or torture me. This king can only humbly request that you forgive these soldiers. They are innocent of my crimes. The king pleaded humbly. Your Majesty. This servant's only mission in life is to protect your well-being. We 3 do not fear death. The 3 soldiers immediately protested, kneeling in front of him and Jian Chen without concern for their life. The king shook his head. This war is a sin that I must bear alone. The decision of going to war does not fall upon your shoulders. Furthermore, you have your own family to take care of. Upon being reminded of their families, the 3 soldiers immediately stiffened with their eyes filling up with tears. The look in Jian Chen's eyes grew dark for a moment. When the king had mentioned family, Jian Chen couldn't help but think to his own family. The king pleaded to Jian Chen once more. Everything is the mistake of this king. I will call my armies back immediately, so please spare my 3 guards. Jian Chen looked to the pale 3 soldiers kneeling nearby. They had already been injured by his initial attacks, so Jian Chen hesitated for a moment. I will forgive them, but if they dare try to exploit the Jessen kingdom in any way, I will not be so kind then. The king let out a sigh in relief. Each one of the 3 guards had been with him for 20 years at the very least and had protected him without question. Although he was their king and they were his servants, they had a deep friendship with each other. Thus, the king had naturally tried his best to ensure that the 3 guards would not die with him. The king knew that Jian Chen was a Heaven Saint Master, so sending these 3 Earth Saint Masters would accomplish nothing but their deaths. Instead of killing the king, Jian Chen grabbed him by the shoulders and took him away, leaving behind the 3 guards still kneeling with miserable looks. Your Majesty. The 3 guards began to tear up as they watched their king get dragged further and further away. Although they wished to go with him, they lacked the power to do so. Jian Chen quickly left the underground palace with the king, re-emerging into the palace hall. By now, there were many armored men of high status along with other officials gathered nearby. Seeing Jian Chen walk out, the palace grew tense with anxiety as several men took out their saint weapons. Even if it cost them their lives, they wanted to stop Jian Chen since they knew that soon, the army attacking the border would return. But when a certain purple and gold-robed elder came walking out, everyone was stunned. It didn't take much to tell that the king had been captured by Jian Chen. Seeing all of the gathered high-ranking officials here, the captured king could only sigh before quickly ordering them to stand down. Then, without needing to be ordered to by Jian Chen, the king immediately issued out an imperial edict to bring back all of the soldiers stationed by the Jessen kingdom's northern stronghold. After the edict, the king turned to Jian Chen. What do you wish for this old king to do now? Jian Chen's strength had already caused the king to give up any chance of escaping. He knew that if he didn't cooperate, his entire army would suffer. The palace would be washed with the blood of his people. An event like this was common enough within the continent. Take me to the treasury. Jian Chen spoke. At this, everyone's face blanched before a blunt elder spoke. Impossible. The treasury is where the root of our kingdom's finances lie. If it is robbed, then our kingdom would, PhD. The elder immediately grew silent as Jian Chen's azure and violet sword Qi shot out and struck through his head, killing him instantly. Prime Minister. Countless of people began to mourn out for the death of this person while others glared furiously at Jian Chen. Grandfather. A few young military officers cried out in grief. Then pulling out their saint weapons, they cried out in a righteous fury, "Fight me to your death!" And with that, they charged straight toward Jian Chen. "No! Retreat! All of you!" The king barked, but unfortunately he had spoke far too late. Jian Chen instantly moved into action, shooting his sword Qi straight through their throats and splashing the halls with their blood. "Get back! Everyone get back! He is not someone you can face against." The king spoke. These people within the kingdom were all the highest-ranking spot holders of the kingdom. Without their existence, then the Pingyang kingdom truly would be gone in all but name. With renewed fear, he turned to Jian Chen before the rest of the people would be killed. "This king will take you to the treasury. Everyone, stand down or be beheaded." Afterward, the king of the Pingyang kingdom guided Jian Chen to the kingdom's treasury. Right behind them, the entire crowd of officials and soldiers followed with anxious faces. Quickly, Jian Chen and the king arrived at the treasury. By the order of the king, the soldiers immediately opened the gates and allowed them entry. The treasury was situated underground in the middle of the palace and was split into several different areas where items of every shape and size could be seen. Jian Chen had the king first show him where the monster cores were being held. It was an expansive area with several different boxes laid out. There was a strange energy that could be seen flowing from the boxes, and when opened, several dozen space belts could be seen arranged inside. Sweeping past them, he disregarded the boxes that contained the Class 1 and Class 2 monster cores since there were far too many to be counted. Arriving at the later boxes, Jian Chen picked up a space belt. Each one of these space belts had several words written on them denoting just how many monster cores there were in each one. 500 Class 3 monster cores. 621 Class 3 monster cores. 1000 Class 3 monster cores. 600 Class 4 monster cores. 530 Class 4 monster cores. Each one of the space belts had been categorized between Class 3, Class 4, and Class 5 monster cores with at least 500 cores within them. There was at the very least 60 or 70,000 Class 3 monster cores, 10,000 Class 4 monster cores, and around 400 Class 5 monster cores. Looking at the numbers written on the space belts, even Jian Chen couldn't help but sigh at the extraordinary amount. The amount here had far exceeded what he had anticipated and had left him tongue-tied. However, when he thought about how the Pingyang kingdom had well over 700 million people, he began to calm down a bit. This was the treasury of the entire kingdom, and if he were to take out several piles of monster cores, it would cause no big ripple among the kingdom. Perhaps this depository of monster cores was the result of dozens of years of collection. Jian Chen decided to take every space belt into his space ring. Even the Class 1 and Class 2 monster cores had not been spared. Since he had several space rings with sufficient space, there was no harm in taking them all. Seeing how Jian Chen was taking every single monster core, the king had a look of absolute anger, but even if he wanted to cry in grief, he wouldn't be capable of shedding a tear. With a mental sigh, he knew from this moment on, if the Pingyang kingdom did not collapse, then it would most certainly fall in power for a very long time. Afterward, Jian Chen arrived at the area of the treasury where the money was contained. After cleaning up the entire place, Jian Chen now had a large sum of purple coins. If he calculated the sum, there would probably be well over 100 million purple coins in total since this was the liquidated assets of the entire kingdom. With this confirmation, the general's face split into a smile and immediately loosened from his tense state. Even the look he was giving Jian Chen changed. When the soldiers realized that this youth was no enemy, they too let out sighs in relief and also smiled. They welcomed any allied Heaven Saint Master since they were extremely crucial in such a moment. It was in a battle that their true worth came out and inspired soldiers with their strength. The only one with a sour expression was the king of the Pingyang kingdom. The situation had grown far more dire than he had thought.
He had no idea that the Jesson kingdom had somehow managed to become friends with one of the 8 great powers, the Qin Huang kingdom. For that kingdom to even be willing to dispatch imperial advisors to help was already bad news for their enemies. Furthermore, to hear that his 4 Heaven Saint Masters that were sent here were killed was a devastating blow. How many Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang kingdom died? Despite being a captive, the king of the Pingyang kingdom couldn't help but ask still. A Heaven Saint Master was an extremely important factor to a kingdom. A loss of just a single one was already a tremendous blow that the Pingyang kingdom couldn't afford to take. The general of the northern stronghold began to laugh out loud. My dear king, allow me to explain this to you. 3 days ago, Senior Chong Wuji was able to kill 2 of your Heaven Saint Masters with his Heaven tier battle skill. Later, Senior Chong Wuji had also been able to come back from the Pingyang kingdom's fort with the heads of 4 more Heaven Saint Masters. Then, he later killed another with his battle skill. The last one had been killed along with the others from the Hidden Dragon Kingdom, thanks to the imperial advisors from the Qin Huang Kingdom. Their heads now adorn the stronghold walls. Hearing this, the king of the Pingyang Kingdom began to sway slightly before falling to the ground. His Pingyang Kingdom had 10 Heaven Saint Masters, and 8 of them had been killed as a result of war. If he added the 2 that died back in the palace, then that meant all 10 of his Heaven Saint Masters had been killed. This was a monumental loss for the kingdom, one that the king barely avoided fainted from after hearing the news. The general's eyes gleamed as he looked at the king before cupping his hands and bowing to Jian Chen. Fellow brother, in what way might you suggest punishing this king here? Jian Chen waved his hands and spoke. Do as you please with him. With a great big smile. He called out to several soldiers to tie up the king until further notice with an enthusiastic voice. Afterward, the general explained the situation to Jian Chen. Despite being treated like a guest, Jian Chen managed to have every single remaining high-ranking officer come and greet him. Once they realized that he was the mysterious entity that had killed 4 Heaven Saint Masters and brought back the king of the Pingyang Kingdom as a captive, they all looked at Jian Chen with adoration. Sitting on a stool, Jian Chen looked at the nearby gates with a complex look. His eyes could reveal a glint of anticipation as well as some anxiety. The general was very good at discerning body language, and so he was curious at what caused such a reaction from Jian Chen. Without giving away his curiosity, he smiled. Fellow brother, might I ask if you are an imperial advisor from the Qin Huang Kingdom? Absent-mindedly, Jian Chen nodded his head before speaking. General, is there anyone from the Chongyang clan here? With a confused look, the general shook his head. I'm afraid to disappoint, but because of the situation in the other 3 strongholds, the Chongyang clan has all been mobilized. Even the 2 Heaven Saint Masters from this stronghold were relocated to help mediate the problems. Hearing this, Jian Chen had a disappointed look. Then where might the young lord of the Chongyang clan be? At this question, the general couldn't help but look at Jian Chen oddly. The young master of the Chongyang clan had his limbs severed. He was escorted back to Lore City to recover with several people this afternoon. Jian Chen's question caused the general to feel skeptical. The Jesson Kingdom and the Qin Huang Kingdom had no relations to each other as far as he knew. But today, the Qin Huang Kingdom's imperial advisors had come by to provide assistance for them. Furthermore, this youth was also an imperial advisor but had also some sort of connection to the Chongyang clan. Connecting the 2 together, the general couldn't help but think. Could this youth in front of him be responsible for the Qin Huang Kingdom coming to the Jesson Kingdom for assistance? Although he was skeptical, the general didn't ask too many questions. He knew it wasn't his place to ask. Upon hearing that the Chongyang clan had left the area, Jian Chen could barely contain his disappointment. The general could see the range of emotions flashing through his face and could use that to confirm his suspicions. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.